James Lindsay is obsessed with lying to his audience. What crazy things can he get them to believe? He does it irresponsibly to pocket all that money from the mills for liberty. The left hates capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory destabilizes normativity, gender binary, and the nuclear family. James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy. He used to believe in something, what happened? Mills for liberty. Gnostic sex cult, building his own world. The Gnostic sex cult, unhinged from reality, totally lost in what can we do? But mock him relentlessly. It's not a Gnostic sex cult, James. No, it's not. Stop lying to your audience. No, it's not. It's not a Gnostic, James. Mary Nardini tells us queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. Catch up, James. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. Queer theory hates capitalism. Whiteness means capitalism. It's all about capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. Whoa. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James. It's capitalism. It's all about capitalism. capitalism. Everyone knows it's capitalism. The socialists know it's capitalism. Wake up, James, it's capitalism. It's capitalism. To pocket all that money from the mills for liberty. The left hates capitalism, but James won't admit it. He refuses to believe queer theory stabilizes normativity, the gender binary and the nuclear family. But James blocks the truth, smears people who try to show him, creates an echo chamber for himself to reinforce his fantasy, to believe in something. What happens for liberty? Gnostic sects called Illusionism world. The Gnostic sects called unhinged from reality. He's totally lost it. What can we do but mock him relentlessly?
Piper, James, take the lead, deceiver. Your life to millions, you're why we lose. Piper, James, great deceiver. You're living in delusion and you're why we lose. James Lindsay spinning tails, got a fantasy in play, pocketing that cash while he's leading minds astray. Milfs for liberty, he's cashing in the bucks, but his logic's out of whack, man, it's all just muck. Left hates capitalism, he's blind to the facts. Queer theory's misunderstood, it's a different attack. Destabilizing norms, breaking down the walls, but James blocks the truth, man, he's lost in the halls. Piper, James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper, James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, it's a bubble of deceit. While he's pocketing the green, we're exposing the cheat. Minardi drops the mask with a bang. For liberation means capital limits, that's the goal. Stop blocking the truth, James, open up your eyes. Our theory's misunderstood, capitalism's a pride. Destroying the old norms, shaking up the scene. Face up to reality, stop the serial line. James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper, James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, up the limit. Whiteness, capitalism, it's all intertwined. Queer theory's the lens, but you're way behind. Liberation means capitalism's gone. Jump, James, hurry up. The lies will cost us the war, that's the price. No property, no house, no business, no money, no parents, no rights, no lives for us all. Socialist reality built on your lies. Piper, James, great deceiver. Parents follow your advice, kids pay the price. Piper, James, great deceiver. You hold up the curtains, cover the rest to be done. Piper, James, great deceiver. You're lying to millions, you're why we lose. Piper, James, great deceiver. You're living in delusion and you're why we lose.
What up, what up, what up, everyone? Welcome to The Cult, where we stream Monday through Friday. Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, or thereabouts to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, depending on how late I am on any given day. But remember, I'm never late. This is my channel. I always show up on time. You guys are just early. Hey, we got a couple questions going on in the chat. Can you answer a question for me? What is the song that is in the intro? I've scoured Spotify for it. I can't find it. So the song that I use is the regular Cult intro, is called Burning in Dystopia. I didn't make that song. I actually have a license on a website where you can download all sorts of like good like music and stuff, and they use it in movies and things like that. And I got that song off that website, but I am licensed to put it on. I can use it however I want to use it, and so I can put that song on YouTube for you. I can't put it on Spotify because it's not like I can't profit on it, but I can use the song for whatever I want. So I'm happy to put that on YouTube for you. There's an instrumental version. There's a one with vocals. I like both of them. I think it's a pretty great song. So I'm glad you like it too. And then you're also asking, where can we find the song that we just heard, the last one? That's actually not my song. That was actually made by Critically Unwoke, the Pied Piper James song, which I just think is fabulous and so great. And so Critically Unwoke will have to put that on Spotify if he feels like it, but he has blessed me with the ability to play that song in the intro, and I just think he did a really great job, so he can keep us updated about whether or not that goes on Spotify. The first song, which is called Gnostic Sex Cult, is on Spotify, and you can find it up there as well. So you can tell, guys, it's a James Lindsay kind of day. It's a James Lindsay kind of day, and the reason, we were going to do another queer Marxism today. I know I said it was queer Marxism week, and we were going to listen to Sophie Lewis talk about abolish the family, and but I was kind of like a little birdie came into my inbox this morning, as little birdies are prone to do, and that little birdie pointed out to me that James had done an episode with Rabbi Barclay, and they had just gotten uploaded to YouTube, and you guys might know. Oh, you guys can't see what I see. Hang on, you guys can't see what I see. There it is. And you guys might remember Rabbi Barclay, because Rabbi Barclay was one of the rabbis that Candace Owens talked to in her final days at the Daily Wire. And so he was actually like one of the people that was like admonishing Candace Owens for saying Christ is king. And we watched a little bit of that episode on this channel. Rabbi Barclay is not nearly as out there as Rabbi Shmuley. Rabbi Shmuley is a whole other level of insanity. But Rabbi Barclay was he was really rude and condescending, quite frankly. And so I think it's just going to be fascinating. I just feel like we have to do this. I feel like, James likes to call everyone who disagrees with Israel and Dave Rubin and Konstantin Kisin and all the people that James saw, and like the Mills for Liberty and all these people. James likes to call people anti-Semitic. Now, I don't know exactly what James's definition of anti-Semitic is. I mean, I know that just last night, I was called anti-Semitic just last night for correctly pointing out that a Jewish person was in fact Jewish. That was all I did. I didn't say Jews are bad. I didn't say that I wanted to kill Jews. I didn't say I wanted to genocide Jews. I would never say those things because I don't want to do any of those things. I don't care if people are Jewish personally. Like, it makes no difference to me. But I was pointing out a piece of factual information that a person who had that they were Jewish in their bio was in fact Jewish, and I was dragged as an anti-Semite for it. So I do kind of wonder what James's definition of anti-Semitic is, because he seems to be just really kind of adamant that everyone is an anti-Semite except for him, and James is part of this contingent with Konstantin Kisin, who thinks that the quote-unquote woke right are all the evil anti-Semites like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, all those people who are, maybe saying that maybe Winston Churchill wasn't the great hero of World War II. Like, maybe there are different ways to look at a situation, and of course that means that you're anti-Semitic. If you say that Winston Churchill was not the greatest hero of World War II, and maybe he did some really fucked up shit, that's also another definition of being anti-Semitic, according to James and his friends. Anyway, so I thought it was interesting that James decided to do an appearance with Rabbi Barclay, and I also heard, and I don't know if this is true, we're gonna watch the interview. I heard a rumor that James may have defined capitalism as private property ownership in this interview. And if that happens, then we did that. We did that. That was us. That was not James. That was not James's original idea. That was James bending the knee and doing what we want him to do, which is to actually tell the truth about what's going on. So if James did in fact say that capitalism is defined as private property, then we are taking credit for that, which is interesting because didn't James tell us that he doesn't even want to talk about capitalism because capitalism is an elementary understanding of socialism, and James has hidden knowledge of the true meaning, which is that they're coming to steal your soul in a Gnostic sex cult ritual. Liquid Marble says, I guess the anti-Semitism here means that you can't criticize Israel because they're an ally of the United States. Yeah. Oh, yeah, James has been calling everyone an anti-Semite for a while. Yeah, James, now that you apparently, allegedly have correctly assessed that capitalism means private property ownership, can you define for us what private property means, James? That's a good next step there. That's a good next step. I found an organization that ties capitalism to animal ownership. Oh, I bet that's true because animals are private property and they need to liberate animals from being private property of their oppressors. I totally believe that, everyday therapist. So we're going to be watching this today and we're going to be talking about it, and it'll be a nice little break. It'll be a nice little break from queer Marxism. You know, queer Marxism can be a little bit dense. It can be a lot. We've done a lot of queer Marxism already this week. Like, I've done 2 podcasts reading queer anarchist literature. We've done a couple of streams, like really assessing this stuff. We're going to be covering it tomorrow, and of course for Socialism Saturday. So we've already done a lot, and I think we're deserving of a break. I think we're deserving of a little bit of fun. I think we're deserving of a James Day where we get to debunk all the bullshit that James puts out into the world. Like, this is just like we do a lot of serious work on this channel. I create more anti-communist content on the internet than I think anyone else does on the internet. By sheer volume, I create at least a dozen hours a week of this stuff on video. I create podcasts. I create written documents. By sheer volume of content, I create more of this stuff than like anyone else. So I don't want to hear anyone complaining. I don't want to hear anyone complaining about, why are you engaging in drama? Why are you talking about James Lindsay? Why aren't you doing serious content? Why are you infighting? Blah, blah, blah. Like, go watch something else. Go watch something else. I need to let my hair down once in a while, too. I'm allowed to take a break and have a vacation, at least for a couple of hours. You know, I talked about real stuff this morning in a Twitter space. In fact, if you guys missed it, there is a new podcast, a new episode of the Actively Unwoke podcast that I just uploaded to my Substack before we got started here. Yeah, John Smith over on Rumble. Oh my God, I love this comment over on Rumble. John Smith over on Rumble says, Lindsay is not imitating Carlin as he takes up knitting. Soon James Lindsay's going to be knitting people's scarves. He's going to be like, this is completely my own idea. I wasn't copying that bitch at all. Anyway, guys, we're doing a new experiment, and you guys may have noticed this on my YouTube channel. You may have noticed this if you follow me on Twitter, and I'm not doing it on a consistent schedule, so it really is one of those things where, like, you have to catch me in the act, because I've always fit in recording podcasts around, like, doing other stuff. So there might be appointments I have, there might be obligations that I have. I do the streams consistently every day. But when it comes to podcast recordings, it's always it's always been when I had time to do it. So usually it's in the afternoons, as it has been lately. Sometimes it'll be later in the evening. But what I'm starting to do is I'm doing this little experiment where I'm doing a Twitter space to record the podcast. So if you follow me on Twitter, I'm Dr. Carlin B on Twitter, DrKarlyn, the letter B. There should be a link in the description, or you can just, look me up. I think I'm not shadow banned on Twitter anymore. And, follow me, set notifications to go off, because I've basically been doing these pop-up Twitter spaces where I just turn on a Twitter space and I start recording. And the whole purpose of this is I have 2 podcasts. I have the Actively Unwoke podcast, which you'll see here. That's just, if you just go to podcast on the Substack, that's what it will come right up, and you can find links to Spotify and Apple Podcasts hopefully within the podcast episode. So you can see here, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can get an RSS link through the Substack app if you have the Substack app on your phone. So you can listen to this stuff on normal podcasting platforms. That's the first podcast I have. So it's just podcast on the website. And then the Inner Circle podcast is the members only edition of my podcast, where I've been doing queer Marxist literature reviews. I've sometimes been dishing the tea on the behind the scenes drama on like the so-called anti-woke space, stuff like that. So that is a members only version of the podcast that exists on the Substack for people who sign up as a member. You can get a special download link that you can plug into your Spotify or Apple Podcasts that will give you the premium episode right to your app. So you only have to do that once when you sign up. Anyway, I've been doing this little experiment where I'm like, we had talked about me doing Twitter spaces, because when I went into other people's Twitter spaces, it was one of those things where like it was causing problems, because even if I didn't do anything that was like unprofessional or something like that, what would happen if I went into other people's Twitter spaces to try to talk about the leftist stuff is inevitably one of James Lindsay's minions would go into the DMs of the person running the Twitter space, and they'd be like, why are you letting Carlin speak? Carlin is a horrible person. And they spread all sorts of bullshit and all sorts of rumors. And then that person comes into my DMs, and it creates an hour-and-a-half argument for me where they're like, why don't you like James Lindsay? James Lindsay is the best. And I'm like, you can't say this. And I'm like, yo, I literally just came into your podcast to talk about abolish the family and queer theory, bro. Like, I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you like my tone. But this happened many times, and I was like, what the fuck? So finally I was like, you know what? I'm doing my own Twitter spaces. And then we had that incident with the Twitter space last week where I was trying to have a grounded discussion about the potential overlap between, the overlords, the fictional overlords, and so radical revolutionary socialism in the United States. And I show up and I've got all this primary source evidence, and then all these fucking crazy people from the dissident right start melting down because they don't have primary source evidence, and that all deteriorated into like whatever. And so I've decided I'm just doing my own fucking spaces from now on. That's it. I like Groyper Twitter spaces. Like, I like interacting with them because they're just chill and conversation and stuff like that, and they're interesting and they're funny. But I'm doing my own spaces, and we kind of had this discussion on my feed not too long ago about how can I incorporate more of my own Twitter spaces in, because I already create so much effing content. Like, I can't just keep adding things on top of things that I'm already doing, because I already create so much content. So my idea was, why don't I overlap Twitter spaces where I'm articulating my ideas, I'm interacting with people, I'm teaching what I want to teach. I overlap a Twitter space with the recording of the podcast, and I do it at the same time. And that way we can have Twitter spaces where people are coming on and discussing things, and I can also record a podcast episode, and I do it at the same time. So I'm doing two things at once, so it's not adding anything to my schedule. It's not more work. It's just working smarter and more efficiently. So today we did the first live recording of the Actively Unwoke podcast as a Twitter space. I talked about James Lindsay and the things he's doing to let communists win, but then people started coming up in the Twitter space, and we actually had a really great discussion about what the radical revolutionary socialist left is doing, the different factions on the radical revolutionary left. We talked a lot about queer theory and the difference between queer theory in academia and the real world. It was a great hour-long discussion where mostly everyone, there's one guy who I ended up kicking out of the Twitter space that got a little uppity. My dog is now getting uppity downstairs, of course. Perfect timing. My dog is quiet all day until I start a live stream on the internet. Then my dog's gonna be like, yap, 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 because she's a Chihuahua. She knows. Anyway, so the newest episode of the Actively Unwoke podcast is up now. It's a little bit longer than the podcast episodes typically were, but I really thought it was a great discussion, and I really encourage people to come and interact with me on the X Spaces. And I don't know why my husband isn't shutting up my dog. Like, he's downstairs sitting right next to her. I really encourage people to come onto the Twitter spaces and engage in that discussion, because unlike James Lindsay, I will actually talk about different ideas. I will actually, and we had, again, there was a debate with a guy today who was like, queer theory is all about sexualizing kids. And I was like, queer theory is not about sexualizing kids. Queer theory is about abolishing the gender binary. And guess what? we were able to have a civil discussion where we exchanged ideas, and the guy I was discussing it with actually knew he knew a lot of stuff. He wasn't dumb. He just had different ideas about these things. So I highly encourage everyone to engage in that, and hope to see people on there soon, and definitely check out the newest episode of the podcast. Nick says pop-up spaces have been fire and you are in control. That's right. It's my house. It's my private property. I'll do what I want. Terry says, isn't queer theory about the destruction of Christianity? Nope. Queer theory is not at all about the destruction of Christianity, Terry. You need to stop listening to anyone who told you that. That is just not true. That is not backed up in the primary source evidence. If you don't believe me, you can look at the countless hours of queer theory training we have on this channel. They never mention Christianity. It is literally never mentioned. They never mention religion. I've actually only heard religion mentioned once in like the thousands of hours that I've been really focusing in on this question. Like, I mean, really to any great extent, they don't mention it. They don't talk about it. So no, that's not true. And no, this is not true either. Nope. Terry, you're listening to dissident right-wing talking points. Terry, what you're doing is you are listening to a right-wing interpretation of what the left is doing. You're not hinged into what the left is actually doing. So I'm gonna tell you, we watch queer Marxism training on this channel. We know what it is, and my audience right now is telling you in the chat that you're wrong. And and listen, Terry, I will tell you that it's okay that you don't understand. Like, you've probably listened to people who have lied to you about this, but what we do is we hinge into reality and we watch the real trainings. We watch primary source evidence, and that is just not something that is in primary source evidence. So we highly encourage you to come and watch this stuff with us. We will show you what they're saying. We will show you what they're doing, and you can decide for yourself. But they don't mention Christianity. They don't mention Western civilization. Those are dissident right-wing talking points. Those are not talking points on the left, and that is the difference. Jan, thank you for being a member of the channel for 4 months. I'm here and ready for James Retardia. Carlin rules. James drools. Indeed. I appreciate you, Jan. Thank you for the super chat. Couple other things before we get started. Now, last night we had an amazing workshop. And I'm going to get this workshop up on the Substack as an on-demand download. You can actually still access the on-demand recording. All you need to do is go to the Substack and actually just register for the event, and you'll be taken right there. Look, here we go. I am not listening to anyone. With all respect, I am making my own judgment. Terry, you're not listening to the left, Terry. And listen, see, this is the problem. This is the problem with the right-wing Christians, is they fucking think they know everything, and they don't know anything. This is the problem. Every time you see, do you guys recognize how polite we were with Terry? Do you guys see how, like, everyone in the chat was perfectly polite? I was polite. Terry came in and said, isn't this about the destruction of Christianity? And we said, nope, it's not. They don't even talk about Christianity. And Terry goes, fuck you guys, I'm leaving. Okay, maybe they didn't say that exactly, but that's the tone. That's the tone that's coming across. And I really want people to see this. And Terry, you don't have to worry about it, Terry. We're going to end up blocking you anyway, because once you whine in my chat and once you stomp off in a huff because you don't want to listen, that's the minute that we block you, because you're not smart enough to be here, Terry, is the thing. You're not smart enough to be here. We tried to be nice to you. We tried to tell you what was going on. We tried to give you resources so you could see for yourself. When you come into my chat with dissident right-wing talking points that are not hinged into what the left is doing and not hinged into what the left is saying, and we have watched literally hundreds more hours than you of queer Marxist content, like the actual trainings, the actual book launches, the actual events that they do. I've gone undercover at queer Marxist events. Terry, I'll bet all the money in my bank account you've never gone undercover at queer Marxist events. I have. I've recorded them on several occasions. They don't mention Christianity. So you can cry all the tears you want about that, and you can complain, and you can whine, and you can stomp your feet and say, I'm leaving because you're not telling me what I want to hear. You can behave like a little bratty 13-year-old girl, Terry, but that's actually not going to change what the answer is. And so, goodbye, darling. You're now banned from my chat. Don't come back. This is an IQ test. It's an IQ test. Every time. It's like, and you guys wonder why the right loses. The right doesn't want to fucking listen. That's why they lose every single time. This is an IQ test. You have to pass an IQ test in order to be able to chat on my channel. If you do not pass the IQ test, you can go on the Daily Wire, you can go on the Blaze, you can go on Steven Crowder, you can go on Tim Pool, you can go on any other channel and chat in whatever crazy fucking ideas you have. You're not going to do it here. Anyway, before I was rudely interrupted by the whining fucking conservative in my chat, we did an amazing workshop last night. We did a fucking awesome workshop last night. It was 2 hours worth of awesome. Now, did anyone here attend the workshop last night? Give me a 1 in the chat if you had a chance to attend the workshop last night. Because what we did was, Honest Dog Allison, who is a member of my community, she's been a member for a while, led us on a workshop to teach us how to create unwoke zines that look like this. This is Allison's work. This is Gayla's work. Gayla has a different style of creating zines, but it's still pretty great. And lots of people attended last night. Rebecca attended, Bod attended, Reagan attended. Elizabeth's going to watch the recording. I will be putting the recording up on Substack. Rottweiler attended, Paul attended, Average Person, Everyday Therapist. You're going to be able to catch up on it. Don't worry about that. Chad attended, Chris attended, Alexis is going to be able to catch up on the recording. Paula watched the replay today. We basically got to sit and watch the person who created these documents, and so many more too, because if you go over to the Unwoke Underground, you'll be able to see a lot of Honest Dog Allison's great work. These are all her creations, and she showed us the technique that she uses to create these. Now, a lot of people might see this stuff and they might say, this is so complicated. This is like artistic. This involves drawing. I can never do this sort of thing. But I think what people saw in the workshop is Allison actually created one of these things literally right in front of us while we were watching. She's using a collaging technique where she prints photos off the internet and then kind of like experiments with it and puts it all together and that sort of stuff. And suddenly it became, even my dog is still complaining. My dog is complaining about the conservative Christians too. It became a much more approachable prospect to be able to create these things, because I really wish my husband would shut up the dog, because I don't want to close my office door because it's 8,000 degrees in my office. I really wish my husband, who is sitting down there and I know can hear me right now, I wish he would shut. No. Dog's still going. Dog's having all sorts of feelings. Hey, Victor, can you shut the dog up, please? No. I think my husband went to the store or something. I think that's what happened. All right. Well, whatever. We're just going to have to deal with it because I can't get up and go shut up the dog. Anyway, Allison is using a collage I'm going to fucking murder my own dog. Not really. I would never do that. But right now I kind of want to. Do you guys know it's like yapping? It just doesn't stop. Yep. Okay. Okay. I think she stopped. Okay. No. Still going. Anyway. Yeah, we should, can someone send some Haitians to my house? Not really, don't do that. I live in New Hampshire. We don't like black immigrants here. Anyway, Allison used a collaging technique that you don't need to know how to draw. You just have to be able to find photos on the internet and cut them out and do it like a scrapbooking type thing. And she taught us how to make some really cool stuff. And so I really want to encourage, Victor, go grab some peanut butter. That'll do the trick. So I really want to encourage everyone to check out this workshop, and I will again be putting it up on the Substack. But if you just go to the Substack, it's right here on the Substack right now. Beat the woke left at their own game, the zine making workshop. Literally, if you just go in and you just sign up, you can, well, you're seeing by the back end here, but you can actually access the recording right now on the Substack. So you just have to sign up as though you were registering it and registering for it before it started, and it'll deliver you the recording right away. But again, I will be making that available, and it was so fun. And we're going to be doing an Unwoke Zine project. We have been doing it for a while, but we want to invite everyone into my supporter Discord to come and join us to make this cool stuff. And we're going to make a whole bunch of Unwoke propaganda, and it's going to be awesome. Also, as a reminder, I do have a new limited edition t-shirt in the Unwoke Art store. That is unwokeart.com. And this was a special debate t-shirt where if you just go to the homepage, it's right at the top. We have the debate-inspired Quiet Please shirt, because I just laughed my ass off when Donald Trump said quiet please to Kamala Harris. And I was like, can we just print out this design and send it around to libraries? Can we do that? Can we get Dan to help us print out this design and send it out to libraries all over the country? especially if Trump actually wins the presidency, that would actually be hilarious. But if you like this design, you can get it in the Unwoke Art Store. It is a limited edition, so it's not going to be in the store for very long. You can get it on black, you can get it on red, you can get it on gold, navy, purple, black heather, oxbow black, or a lighter version of it. And again, this is a limited edition. It's just a fun shirt. I thought it was funny as hell. So you can head over to the Unwoke Art Store. It is 25% off until Sunday evening. The discount is automatically taken at the checkout. You don't need a discount code or anything. So head over there, pick one up. And also you can get the zine-inspired t-shirts that feature some of Honest Dog Allison's designs. You can get stickers that you can use to put out in the world. Lots of great merch in the Unwoke Art Store. And of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing, which I really, 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 really appreciate. All right. Who is ready to get in to James and a Rabbi walk into a bar? Who is? Yeah, I almost made a t-shirt with that too, Liz. But I was like, I kind of feel like I have to pick one or the other. Like maybe I'll try to do one with Trump and Kamala where Trump is like looking like I'm talking please, like something like that. I don't know. All right, who is ready for a fun-filled afternoon of mocking of James? Now listen, we're not just going to be dicks about this. I will say this for those of us who I gotta get my ticker up to encourage you guys to give me super chats. By the way, guys, you can support the work I'm doing over on the Substack if you want to get a monthly membership for $8 a month or an annual membership for $80 a year. That does help to support what I'm doing because I'm 100% funded by you. And so I do have a goal of trying to get 100 new supporters on the Substack. If you want to pick one up, that will contribute to that goal. We're looking to do that by the end of the month. So, we're still like a tiny bit behind, but we're still making good progress. I'm still pretty happy with the progress. So you can head over there to do that if you feel so inclined. Anyway, back to this. Oh shit, I gotta actually put the super chat number in it. Hang on. I actually have gotten super chats, so hang on. There we go. You can also send in super chats if you want to help me meet the goal for today. Okay, here's the thing. We are not going to make fun of James just for the virtue of making fun of James. If James says something we agree with, we will celebrate the fact that we agree with James. If James says something that is correct, we will say that we agree with James and that is correct. However, if James lies, if James steals my talking points, if James says something that is absurd and completely unhinged from reality, we're going to point that out too. So I do want to play it straight. I do want to be intellectually honest about this whole thing. But make no mistake, we're going to have plenty of opportunities throughout this to make fun of James. But unlike James, we are going to remain intellectually consistent. And we're going to be focusing on the ideas. We're not going to make any fucking character attacks. We're not going to be saying, you're fat, James. You're fat and ugly. Because that's what James's audience does. And it's annoying AF. And it just proves that James and his audience are not capable of making intellectual arguments. So we're going to focus on the ideas. That is what we're going to be critiquing, and we're going to play it straight, and that's just going to be the way it is. Guys, please mount the like button for me if you would be so inclined, and we will get this here party started with Rabbi Barclay and James Lindsay.
James Lindsay, to be here and talk about a number of things. James, thank you so much for being here and taking the time out of your schedule and out of all the work that you do to come and share some thoughts and conversation and dialogue. It's really, really appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me. It's appreciated on my end too.
So you are prolific in terms of your writing, your speaking. So because we are on a limited timetable, we don't want to go for 10 hours, and I have a feeling you and I could talk about politics and just life for hours. You've become really known for the phrase cultural Marxism. People are constantly saying that. But most people, unfortunately, talk about things they have no idea what they're talking about.
So
they'll use the term jihad as an example.
You don't say. Most people talk about things they have no idea what they're talking about. You don't say, Rabbi Barclay. We agree.
People having no idea what jihad actually is. They'll use the term waqf, not knowing what waqf is in Islamic theology. And people, I'm hearing more and more people using the term cultural Marxism, and it's sort of a catchphrase, and they have no clue what it actually means. Can you spend just a couple minutes and just define for us a clear definition of cultural Marxism, and then
Yep,
as
it
well
is.
as a term that I've recently found in your writing, and I'm not sure if it's pronounced deracinization or deracinization, but also that term as well, so that there's a common language that we can have dialogue through.
Yeah, sure. So cultural Marxism is a fraught term. So we'll just begin with that. Not only is it that it's just kind of being thrown around, I would actually argue more accurately than not by many people on the conservative side of things, to identify what's going on, say, with the so-called woke movement. But it's also been, I mean, if you go to Wikipedia and you type in cultural Marxism, it will take you to a page that says cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. And they describe it as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, as a matter of fact, in order to try to prevent people from.
Does Wikipedia really describe cultural Marxism as an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory? And the basis of that is going to be that the Jews are behind Marxism in the US, and that's what makes it an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. By the way, just in case people are unclear, the majority of people in the Frankfurt School were Jewish. I'm not saying that all Jews are responsible for Marxism. That's just not true, and that's not fair, and we should never play into this collectivist identity politic game. I am just merely pointing out that that the majority of people involved in the Frankfurt School, which delivered Marxism to the United States by showing up at Columbia University in the 30s, the majority of them were Jewish. That's real. All right.
Actually talking about cultural Marxism, which a little bit ironically mostly refers not to what's accurately called cultural Marxism, but to something that developed later in that stream, which is more accurately known as critical Marxism. Marxism evolved a great deal during the 20th century. Just to kind of put some historical context to all this, Karl Marx came up with what we call Marxism today. He called it humanism, but he came up with his philosophy and his economic program in the 1840s to the 1860s. And it didn't really go very far. It didn't go much of anywhere. And then all of that changed in the 1910s during World War I. And in the years leading up to World War I, there was a big push towards socialism in Europe that actually had been fomenting for a few decades. But simultaneously in Russia, very famously, Vladimir Lenin led the Bolshevik Revolution,
Jewish.
took over Russia, and installed
Jewish.
Communism in Soviet Union. The problem is that Lenin's push of Bolshevism into the Soviet Union was not concurrent with Karl Marx's theory of the development of history. Karl Marx believed that history just develops in discrete stages. Those stages generate their own contradictions. The contradictions bubble up and cause finally a rupture, and a revolutionary class arrives, taking up the new view that understands the contradictions better than everybody else and flips society over. And in particular, feudal societies that Europe and Russia and so on had been in the past, and Russia was at the time in 1917 under the Tsar. Feudal societies are supposed to go through a capitalistic production-driven phase.
True.
Where private property becomes the kind of rule of the day, no longer having to give fealty.
Wow. So James does understand this. And he is just failing to teach his audience these very basic things. James, I wonder if you're actually able to articulate what private property means. And I think that it's actually really important for people to know that James Lindsay understands this, because I've been saying for months and months and months and months and months, James Lindsay is lying, 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 James Lindsay is lying. And every time I say James Lindsay is lying, I get a new person that comes and they say, Carlin, are you sure James is lying? Are you sure he just doesn't know? And every time I have said, yeah, I'm sure that he knows, because it is just not possible that James has consumed as much far left academia philosophy as he has, and he doesn't know this. It's just not possible. And I know this again because I've spent thousands of hours watching far left trainings over the past almost 4 years, and so it is impossible to avoid. You cannot study the far left and not understand this concept. And so I've been telling people for a while, every time James doesn't explain this to people, he is lying. And people think, well, maybe James just doesn't know. No, he does know. He does know. This is all the proof you need. He knows. He just refuses to explain it to people.
To your landlords and the royalty that have organized society in a feudal system. And what happened in Russia was not that. A feudal society was pushed by Lenin and the Bolsheviks directly into socialism. So the idea was supposed to be feudalism generates its own contradictions, gives rise to the desire for owning one's own private property rather than owning it through or having access through some protectorate lord in feudalism. So then people demand their own private property and get a stage of capitalism where they can own and use their own private property to build their own lives. And then that capitalism generates its own contradictions that cause people to demand the government to take care of them, more or less, which is a socialist program that comes out allegedly, according to Marx. Well, the problem is that, like I said, Lenin skipped the essential stage, in fact, the productive stage, where the fundamental necessities of an industrial economy.
And by the way, that's why that is what James just explained, which I'm sure he is not going to explain here, but I'll do it. We get people in the chat all the time. Why don't socialists just go to Venezuela? Why don't socialists just go to Cuba? Why don't socialists know that real socialism doesn't work? And the answer I always say is, well, they say that real socialism has never been tried because socialism has to be implemented in an industrialized society. So no, they're not going to go to Venezuela. No, they're not going to go to Cuba. No, they really don't believe real socialism has ever been tried because like socialism hasn't ever been implemented in an industrialized society. And they literally write books saying this. They write books saying, like, you know, we know that things have gone wrong in the past, but that's because socialism was not implemented correctly. So no, they're not leaving the United States because they need to implement it here in order to get their global socialism, because the United States is like the first domino that's going to fall. And they believe that once the United States falls, and the United States is an industrialized society, so it's the society that is primed to have real socialism work. And once the United States fall, all the other countries are going to fall too, because they don't believe that they don't believe socialism can succeed if it's not global. They also don't believe in borders. They believe that borders enforce private property or capitalism or things like that. And so no, they're not going to leave. That's why they want it here. If they get it here, they get it everywhere.
Are supposed to be built under capitalism, and then socialism is going to redirect them to a better purpose. And I set the table with all of that kind of historical context that has very little to do with cultural Marxism, because the Marxists in Europe were looking on, and they saw this, and they saw that what happened in Russia was the first successful Marxist experiment, in the sense that it actually established a government, not a government that works. It was the first thing that actually became a socialist state, and at the same time it violated Marx's theory of history, which was supposed to be an unquestionable and immortal science of history. So it's not supposed to be able to be contradicted. And then meanwhile, the capitalist workers in Europe in the 1910s were not getting on board with the communist program. As a matter of fact, socialism was taking a bad turn in the 1910s because what was happening was World War I. And World War I was inspiring, given the context of the war, an enormous amount of very vigorous and very hate-filled nationalism and a blaming of scapegoats for national misfortunes.
James doesn't like nationalism. James believes that nationalism is white supremacy and anti-Semitism, when in fact, nationalism is the antidote to socialism.
and for the war itself. And so what you saw was a big rise in nationalist thinking and a move away from internationalist communism, as Karl Marx had laid it out. The idea was that the workers of the world would unite, not workers within each place. So you have this Italian Marxist, Antonio Gramsci, very notably, who had met with Lenin and who had worked with him and who knew Stalin and did not like or trust Stalin and warned Lenin about him, and who worked with the others that were in Germany, in around Europe, George Lukács in Hungary, the predecessors of the Frankfurt School.
By the way, I just want to say this. People question again why I'm so critical of James, because when history looks back on this time, and I do believe history will look back on this time, I have constantly said the work I'm doing isn't actually for right now. The work I'm doing is for history. I want people 50 or 100 years from now to look back at this time and be like, Poroshenko was highly critical of James Lindsay's bullshit, and she tried to tell everyone that he was full of shit, and no one listened to her. And that's what I want. Just like James said, like, Gramsci was highly critical of Stalin and he didn't like Stalin. I really want people in history to look back and be like, Karlin Poroshenko tried to tell people, she tried to tell people that James was wrong, and she tried to get other people to tell people that James was wrong too. And she really tried, and she was very critical of James, and she made all these videos being critical of James, and she pointed out all the flaws in James's ideas, and all James did was make character attacks because he wasn't capable of engaging in intellectual conversation. But there were people who were questioning this asshole, and there were people who were speaking up, and those people were highly critical of what was going on. You know, Stalin got into power, Stalin fucked up a lot of shit according to a lot of socialists. That doesn't mean there weren't people who weren't critical of him. That's why I'm doing it. Yup. Just like people are saying Yuri Bezmenov warned us, in the future they're going to say Karlin tried to warn us. She tried. And so perhaps it will be long after I'm dead, and that's fine. But there will be people someday who say, yeah, crazy bitch. They called her crazy. They called her crazy. They called her a narcissist. James said she had borderline personality disorder. And that's all because she was trying to warn people. Well, yes, I know. I know according to the James, I'm on the woke right. I know that. And that's fine. I don't give a fuck. Because unlike James, I'm not struggle sessioning people. And unlike James, I'm able to engage in intellectual conversation about ideas.
Germany were all collaborators with Antonio Gramsci, and Antonio Gramsci.
So hold on a second, James. Okay, let me ask the question on this. So, what if I understand what you're saying? Because I don't want it to become all about history per se, but more about culture. Because what you're saying is that what you're saying is that, and one of my undergraduate degrees from Berkeley was in poli-sci. You're expressing very succinctly that Marxist theory was feudal to capitalism to socialism to communism, right? And that, in fact, the USSR became straight from feudal to socialism. Communism was the idea.
That's right.
Correct?
No capitalism involved.
No capitalism involved. Doesn't that mean that the United States is primed for Marx, or if you accept Marxist theory, that it's primed, that the United States is primed to move from this capitalist stage to the socialist stage right now, if you accept the Marxist theory?
If you accept the Marxist theory, but
That's
this was
the
the exact problem that just over 110 years ago they were also grappling with, because so was Western Europe 110 years ago. It was already an industrial economy operating in a capitalist system that already, in fact, was close to its heyday of monopoly capitalism, which is supposed to be the rupture point, and which, of course, has chilling points for us, because we're rapidly going back through large multinational consolidations to a kind of monopoly capitalism. But what was happening was not communism. Europe wasn't having it. In fact, Europe didn't go communist internally. It went communist because the Soviet Union had the power to come crush Eastern European states and force them to flip. So outside of the Hungarian Revolution, there was very little communism that took place organically in Europe, and the Hungarian Revolution only established a state for about 4 months, and then it collapsed.
It does smell like candy corn.
So that's the political history, but when we're talking about the cultural Marxism, the connotation of it today, as opposed to the denotation.
That's right.
See, if Rabbi Barclay was interested in Marxism today, he really should have interviewed me instead of Jim. Maybe I should reach out to Rabbi Barclay, be like, I heard he's going to call me an anti-Semite or something, but like, I actually would have, Rabbi Barclay, I don't care if you're Jewish, bro. I don't care if we disagree on Israel. if you want to have a conversation about what real socialism in the United States looks like today, I'll come and talk to you about it. We can put our differences aside. We can be civil. I don't hold any ill will towards you, bro. If you want to have a conversation about that, I'll be able to show you way more than James will. I'll be able to show you videos of real socialists. James doesn't have any of that stuff. I'll be able to explain it succinctly. I promise way more succinct than James. Should I actually reach out to Rabbi Barclay? Well, I guess let's see how far this goes. Let's see how this goes. You know, I still knit, but I'm kind of taking a break from knitting right now, if I'm honest about it. I'm just like, for reasons, like I still have knitting sitting on my desk and stuff, but like I'm not anti-knitting or anything. Sometimes we just need to take a break. Yeah, I know, but like sometimes we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, you know, and try, but I guess we're only 9 minutes into this.
Historical perspective. When we think of the connotation of cultural Marxism, for the person who is not a political scientist, for the person who is not even a political junkie, how would you define just cultural Marxism? This terms that's being thrown all around. I mean, you and I both know that people say communism and socialism having no idea what that really means.
True, like
they say
James.
Marxism having no idea. So what does cultural Marxism really mean, both the denotation and the connotation in today's society?
So this is where Gramsci comes in, because Gramsci was trying to square the circle. He was trying to figure out the Western European context. That's why I gave all the context in the first place. And Gramsci said...
Rabbi Barclay literally just asked you, how does it show up in the world today? And James is like, let's go back to the 50s and talk about Gramsci. This is the problem. This is the problem. Now, there's nothing wrong with talking about Gramsci. There's nothing inherently wrong with that act. But when you get a very specific question, and Rabbi Barclay is asking a fair question, let's talk about what that means in the world right now. And you go, let's talk about Gramsci from the 50s. James, that was 70 years ago, motherfucker. That was 70 years ago. He's not talking about the historical development of Marx. He asked you specifically what it is right now. Why can't you answer that question?
That Western culture, Western civilization has cultural mores located in family, religion, education, media, law that prevent the acceptance of a socialist regime. And so that the cultural environment has to be transformed from within. He said that the culture of the West is hegemonic, so it creates a sort of force field that repels a revolutionary...
I see what he's doing. He's going down the long march through the institutions because Gramsci was the one that coined the long march through the institutions.
Change. People want to keep living within their capitalist culture. So capitalist culture, not capitalism as an economic system, is maintaining the capitalist economic system.
Wow!
And he said the only way to...
James, it kind of sounds like you understand that the left believes that capitalism is not an economic system, but is in rather a cultural model. It also seems to be to sound like, James, that you understand that capitalist societies reproduce capitalism, which is something you haven't explained yet to your audience, James, and how that relates back to the nuclear family. James, where'd you get that idea? Because, James, listen, we scrubbed through all your content. I'm gonna be honest, we did a whole fucking project where we looked through all your fucking content because you swore up and down you had talked about the problem of reproduction, and then we looked through all your content, and the only time you had actually talked about what you call the problem of reproduction was in reference to the educational system. It was in reference to the K-12 schools. It was looking back at your Marxification of Education book, talking about how the schools reproduce this, which is not incorrect. But James... we were talking about it in relation to social reproduction theory in the nuclear family, which is the idea that social reproduction theory is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. That's what James calls the problem of reproduction. He doesn't actually explain what it is. It's that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. And what that means is that the nuclear family is the means of reproduction of capitalism, because the nuclear family forms the basis of reproduction in our society. And capitalism reproduces as a social system through the nuclear family. But James, my point is this, is that you weren't actually talking about this stuff a couple months ago until we were starting to harangue your ass on it. So I'm just interested to see if you're able to explain this correctly, James, because it's obvious and clear that you're getting this from somewhere, and you're saying capitalism a lot more in this interview than I've ever heard you say it before. So, I mean, I guess we want to congratulate you, James. I mean, congratulations on doing the thing we told you to do. You're a very good boy, James. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Do you want a treat? Do you need a pat on the head? Because you are doing the things that we demanded you do, which is explain the truth to people. I'm just wondering where you got these ideas and if you're going to be able to explain them correctly. Not you, James Lynch. Not you.
To do that is to enter the cultural producing institutions themselves. Again, primarily family, education, media, religion, and law. Enter into those and transform them slowly from within, what he called create a counter-hegemony.
Did you say family?
That confuses at first and then eventually opens the door to accepting socialism as a cultural phenomenon that will then lead to accepting socialism as an economic phenomenon. So its actual definition, the cultural Marxism definition, would be that you have to transform the culture to accept socialism rather than having a capitalist culture in order to create the conditions under which Western capitalist countries will accept a socialist economic regime.
Yo, James has already said capitalism like 24 times in this interview. He must have really been tweaking because James does not like saying the word capitalism at all.
The goal becomes to do cultural influence or cultural criticism rather than to try to force the seizing of the means of production, which is a very economic revolution sort of approach.
Dance, James!
So you're keeping the capitalistic system, you're keeping that whole business kind of world, but specifically you are changing and influencing and shifting the family, education, media, religion, and law aspects of the culture. Is that
Yes,
pretty much the accurate?
that's right.
So if
That's right.
so if that's the case, we have 5 different fronts that are happening that really you're defining as cultural Marxism, where we see the effect of cultural Marxism in our world. And again, it's beautiful you define them this way: it's family, education, media, religion, and law. Correct?
Right. And
family, education, religion, media, and law. I just want people to think about what groups might control some of those institutions, like media, probably law too, if we're honest about it.
Point out that Gramsci added special emphasis on education, understanding that all of the other institutions except family are downstream from education.
Except family. There's that family.
So Gramsci
again, James.
said that
We're
he believes that everything is downstream from education. That's interesting. Do you agree with that?
I mean, it's a low resolution explanation, but yes, partly.
It's a low resolution explanation. The high resolution of explanation is Marx is going to steal your soul, and this is a spiritual battle led by Oprah and the Gnostics and the New Age and the WEF and the NWO and the worldwide conspiracy theory. That's the high resolution explanation. The low resolution explanation is if you take over the schools and you are in charge of the curriculum that the vast majority of children in the country learn in the schools, then you can indoctrinate the children in the schools to believe leftist ideas. But James thinks that's a low resolution explanation.
The things that are taught in education today will very likely be indicative of the politics in the next generation. And so Gramsci understood, though, that if you can transform the way that law students learn law and transform the culture that they believe, law is embedded within, that they'll practice law differently. So law education becomes more important than trying to go after the law itself, and it becomes a kind of a generational attack that way. And the same thing could be said for the way that you train up religious leaders, whether they go to some kind of a seminary for Christians or whatever else. Then you can actually get them to misunderstand or to understand their scripture in a way that lends itself to socialist belief through those values. So education became kind of a linchpin for him, and he focused a lot, particularly on that, saying that there needed to be the development of what he called organic intellectuals who came out of their given contexts. And the organic intellectuals would be the ones who are able to go into these institutions and transform them from within to create a new culture that would be accepting of socialism.
Okay, so and it's interesting because I actually don't agree with Gramsci on it. And again, we all look at the world through our own worldview, and because of my background and how I look at the universe, to me, it all stems from spirituality, from religion.
Oh, James will agree with you on that.
That actually, if you're dedicated,
actually, Rabbi Barclay, we agree with you on that too. We agree. Well, to a certain extent, we agree. To a certain extent. Human Centipede says, low resolution, things that happen in the real world. High resolution, things I think about in my head. Yeah, low resolution explanation. Carlin is right. Yep, I love that. I have to take a picture of that. Yep. True. Yeah, I agree that I think that there's a spiritual root of all this, and it is just so interesting because when you trace back the roots of critical theory, critical race theory specifically, but when you trace back the intellectual origins of critical theory, do you know where you land? You land at the Kabbalah. I know this because a friend of mine did it. I didn't do this. A friend of mine did it, and she got really into reading all this stuff, and she just kept going back and back and back and back and back and looking at the sources of all the information and stuff like that. And when she got to the origin point of critical race theory, she landed at Kabbalah. Maybe someday she'll lay it all out publicly. I just know that she did that in private. So, to a certain extent, Rabbi Barclay, I think some of us would agree with you that the origin of this is spiritual in a very specific way, perhaps to God's chosen people.
Is to a faith tradition and to the exploration of that tradition, really knowing it, that in fact that shifts how you get educated. And the process of education, but it doesn't. It doesn't make a difference either way. We're talking about family, education, media, religion, and law, and we see that so clearly in today's society, where they're acting out. So let's again make it simple, because I really think one of the problems is human beings, and tell me if you disagree with this, all too often want to say they understand a concept without actually understanding the simplicity of the depth of it.
True.
So they can talk all about
James
this,
resembles
but
they
don't, know about this. And I think it's important in our discussion to be really clear, to try and help people understand. And I think it's beautiful the way you just phrased it. Cultural Marxism, and again, you're taking it from Gramsci, family, education, media, religion, and law. So you just talked about how it's influencing in education. It's influencing in education as well, with everything from K through 12 and below. Just to, again, make it simple for people. One example of cultural Marxism.
No. Not in the way that you're thinking this, because you're trying to be a pain in the ass and you're deliberately obfuscating what I'm saying. So no.
Marxist influence, for lack of a better word, in each of these 5 categories. Fair? So family.
So the biggest thing
talk about the family, James. Let's hear it.
With family is the attempt to draw a wedge between parents and children, overwhelmingly.
Yep. True.
There are a few ways that that's happening that people will find resonant. The most, at the tip of most people listening's mind will obviously be the phenomenon with the sexuality and transition, gender transition. Obviously, you teach the children that, they can be some newly invented sexuality or newly invented gender identity. They come home, they tell their parents.
All right, here's the deal. Here is what James should be teaching. Let me lay this out simply and clearly. The goal of queer Marxism is to abolish the gender binary. Abolishing the gender binary means abolishing the concepts of men and women. Excuse the chihuahua barking in the background. I can't control her right now because my husband is not here. So what they believe is that capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created the social construct of men and women by putting men in the workplace where they do all the work and they make all the money and they have all the power. It put women in the home doing the unpaid labor of raising the nuclear family or the next generation of proletarian workers. This is a hierarchy. The gender binary is also called the patriarchy. That's why men are above women. It is a hierarchy. The goal of Marxism is to level all hierarchies. It is to abolish all hierarchies. It is to create sameness. It is to mean that everyone is the same. It's not that everyone ends in the same place. It's that everyone is the same. So the way that they want to flatten the gender hierarchy that has been created by capitalism is to abolish the gender binary, which is the concept of men and women, and create a non-binary world. Non-binary, people who are identifying as they, them. That means no binary. If you are identifying as Z, Zay, Zim, Zer, Fay, Fair, whatever other pronouns these people want to use, that is a non-binary identification. They're not just trying to get rid of women. They're not just trying to get rid of men. This is not about persecuting men in any way. This is not about persecuting women. It's not about any of that. It's by getting rid of both genders to make everyone non-binary. What that does is that is an attack on the nuclear family. The attack on the gender binary is an attack on the nuclear family, because if you don't have the gender binary, the nuclear family will inherently fall apart. The nuclear family is the means of reproduction of capitalism through the thing called social reproduction theory. We talked about this earlier, but I'll explain it again briefly. Social reproduction theory is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves until those systems are disrupted. What the left believes is that women who do the unpaid labor in the home of having and raising the next generation of proletarian workers are feeding the capitalist enterprise, because having children and raising them with capitalist values creates the next generation of workers who will be oppressed under capitalism. The way that you disrupt that literal reproduction of the family is by disrupting the gender binary, which is also called the patriarchy, which is what they're trying to abolish by teaching kids that they are non-binary in school. This is not about sexualizing kids. I'm not saying there aren't people that do that. I'm not saying that kids shouldn't be protected of that. I'm saying that the goal is not to sexualize kids. The goal is also not to transition kids. They don't want people transitioning from man to woman or woman to man, because if you transition from man to woman or woman to man, that still upholds the gender binary. They want to abolish all gender because that is what flattens the hierarchy, and that is what is going to do the biggest strike against the nuclear family, which is the literal means of production of capitalism. Nope, that is a simplistic conservative bullshit explanation that is not hinged into reality. You want to know why? I have them on video saying all of this. This is not coming from me. This is coming from leftists who say it on video. Hey, thanks, Milo. I appreciate that. So that is what James should be explaining to people. That is what people need to know. All the attacks on parental rights comes from that. All the efforts you see to try to queer children, to insert any information about gender into school curriculums at all, they all come from this. And the goal is to abolish gender and to abolish the nuclear family as a result of abolishing gender, because they believe that they cannot give their Marxist revolution until the nuclear family is abolished, because as long as the nuclear family exists, then capitalism will be upheld. That is what James should be explaining here. Let's see if James actually explains that.
Parents to parents say, I don't recognize that. There's a conflict now between parent and child. And, hey, Dad, you don't understand me. Things.
Who is doing this? Radical revolutionary socialists. Are those radical revolutionary socialists Jewish? Most of them are not. So don't come in here with that. Don't come in here with this. I don't want to hear this. We can talk about the origin point of a lot of this stuff being a Jewish origin point. We can talk about how that we've watched presentations with Jewish rabbis explaining that gender ideology came from them because they believe in 6 or 7 different forms of gender identity. We can talk about the fact that the Frankfurt School was mostly Jewish. However, what we are going to be intellectually honest about, which you guys don't like being intellectually honest about, is that the actual activists who we can name by name and the actual organizations who we can name by name that you guys don't even know exist, those organizations are not Jewish. Those activists are not Jewish. So no, don't fucking lie. Anyone who comes in here and is like, but who's behind it, Carlin? Who's behind it? Who's doing this? You guys are always doing the same thing. You're trying to get me to say that this is all Jewish people, and I'm going to come back and say that I know who these activists are by name, and I know that most of them are not Jewish. And that's just reality. And if you want to know who they are by name, you are welcome to come to my almost daily streams that I do on this topic, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. You are welcome to come to Socialism Saturday, every Saturday at 6 p.m. You are welcome to access the literal thousands of hours of video that I have about this stuff on my YouTube channel. You are welcome to go over to my Substack, where I have a lot of clips of this stuff. You are welcome to interact with the playlists that I have on YouTube with the How to Speak Socialist series, where I'm teaching this. You're welcome to access my full How to Speak Socialist training, where I lay out all this information. You can find this information in any number of different places, but we are not doing this. Who are they, Carlin? Who are they really? Where do they really come from? Aren't they all Jewish? No, they're not. No, they're not. And that's reality, and you guys are going to have to grapple with that reality at some point. And that's just the way it is. And if you want me to think otherwise, then you can provide me with primary source evidence. And if you can't do that, shut the fuck up.
Are different now or whatever, right? So you have that wedge very clearly. You also have the schools reinforcing that now by law in many states. California just passed a law requiring teachers to lie to parents about this in order to so-called protect
that's
the children.
True.
I want to come back to the transgender. So let's go through the other ones as well, because I'd really like to dive into that a little bit if we can. And share some stories that I think you'll find interesting, because I am in California.
Sure.
And
let me give a more a softer example or a more subtle example. Also, one of the most common complaints I heard when Common Core was pushed on the majority of our states across the U.S.
I just want to point out that James was asked explicitly about the family. You guys heard my explanation about what the family is and how it plays into cultural Marxism, my very detailed and yet simplistic and concise explanation. And James, instead of answering the question that Rabbi Barclay asked, deflected and went back to education. And now he's talking about Common Core, which has nothing to do with what's going on. Well, okay, I won't say Common Core is good. Okay, Common Core sucks. But that has nothing to do with the family and its role in the advancement of cultural Marxism.
Common Core education was, in particular, in that my background is in mathematics. I heard people asking me all the time about the kind of peculiar way that Common Core mathematics and
I have two rules in my chat. I was just muted, so I have to say this again. I have two rules in my chat. Number one, don't be a dick. You will not insult me. You will not insult other members of my audience. I can do whatever I want because you are in my house, and therefore I can do whatever I want because you are here by my consent. Number two, no whining. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care how you feel about the way I just spoke to you. I care about you coming and sitting your ass down and learning what is going on in the world. And if you are not inclined to do that, then you can go somewhere else. We know what that question means. I get asked that question literally every single day. So no, I don't believe you that you weren't trying to insinuate that it was the Jews, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. I don't believe you because I'm literally asked that question every single day in exactly that tone of voice. So you are either going to sit here and you are going to learn or you are going to leave, but don't whine in my chat and expect me to pat you on the head and give you a fucking cookie because that is not going to happen. If you want someone that cares about your feelings, go somewhere else.
instruction required students to learn mathematics. And as a mathematician, I saw the logic of it, but I also understand that children are not particularly developed in their abstract reasoning capacities. So trying to get them to reason abstractly in the Common Core approach misses what teaching them a basic algorithm would, which is more developmentally appropriate would. So I had could see both sides of the argument, but what was particularly concerning was that what you heard from parents during that time was, I can no longer help my kids with their math homework. And what they would also say, the teachers were like, well, don't have your dad help you with your math anymore because he's showing you, yeah, you're getting the right answer, but we have a particular method. So all of a sudden this, parents directing the upbringing and education of their child element where parents help their children with a difficult subject for most kids, which is mathematics. There's a bonding element there. There's the transmission of, hey, this is how I did it.
Wait.
Let's be related.
James is arguing that the way they're trying to break down the family unit is by telling kids not to get help doing their math homework from their parents. And they implemented this new math bullshit to be able to have a way to confuse parents who learned math. This is some goddamn conspiracy theory. What James is saying is that the reason they implemented new math, which is bullshit, by the way, like anyone who draws boxes and like that's stupid. James is saying that they implemented new math in school in order to create a dividing line between children and parents by taking away the ability of the parents to teach kids how to do math, because they were now required to do math in a different way. And that is how they're... James.
We can relate to one another. This is how I overcame it as a child. That all got cut away. So this is yet another wedge being driven between parents and children in the family domain.
And look, I'm actually the first generation, and I remember when I was called in elementary school, we're switching to the new math.
Mm.
So and so we're talking 50 years ago. This isn't something that just has happened.
No. New math was not taught 50 years ago. I learned old math in school. Where the hell did that... James like, yes, they started teaching new math 50 years ago. No, they didn't. They started teaching new math in like, what, the early 2000s or something? When did they start teaching new math in school? Does anyone know? Because I absolutely got taught old math in school.
And you talked about a little bit about education. You talked about the education. Again, very briefly, because we want to go through a lot of things. Media. Where do we see cultural Marxism in media?
And that's all we have on the family, folks. That's it. That's it. That's all we have on the family. No, new math was not instituted in the 60s. That is not correct. I'm sorry. New math was instituted in the 2000s. That's all the explanation about the family, folks. Abolish the family comes from new math, according to James Lindsay. Come on. Corey, don't make shit up in my chat. That's just not true, bro. Not true. Oh my God. The addition to genital mutilation pipeline. I'm talking about the new math where what James is talking about is the one that was implemented in the 2000s. Where they were teaching kids via fucking boxes and they had to move things in boxes or whatever the hell. That's what James is talking about. Google says 2010. That rings a lot more true. I think it may have been a little bit earlier than that, but people are saying 2010. Everyday Therapist says, my kids never did new math in the 2000s because they were homeschooled, but new math existed. When was Common Core implemented in schools? That's what they said, specifically Common Core. Common Core was not implemented in the 60s, guys. Come on. They're specifically talking about Common Core. That was implemented under Obama. Thank you. No, that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about Common Core. People have got to listen. Gotta listen. Your lived experience is not what matters. You gotta listen.
The media have been the primary purveyors of cultural Marxist ideas. So Marxism, on page 1 of the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx says that Marxism is defined, or the movement of history, the core belief of Marxism is that the movement of history is defined by the clash of antagonistic classes. So in other words, that there's class conflict. And he says that in a word, that class conflict is summarized as oppressor versus oppressed. No force in our society has...
What I am saying is that Common Core was specifically cited, and so I made the assumption that people were listening when they said Common Core. That's what I'm saying. So who wants to continue to argue about new math in the chat? Can we move on now? Because because this is completely derailing at this point. It was specifically said Common Core. And people can have all the feelings they want about, no, new math was actually implemented in the 60s. That's not Common Core. That's not what's being discussed. So I don't give a flying fuck if they called it new math. That's literally not what's being discussed. And this is why I ask people to listen rather than to go into their feelings and go back to their own lived experiences of being in school in the 60s. Can we move on? Because the actual point was that James is not actually able to explain how the nuclear family advances cultural Marxism and how they're trying to attack the family in order to get their Marxist utopia. That's actually what was being discussed. And now we've derailed into people having feelings about which new math is the right new math when it was specifically said that it was Common Core. The problem with James is that he's correct when he points out it's a class struggle, but he doesn't follow up with private property as a driving factor. Well, we now know that he understands that, Rottweiler, because we heard him say it earlier in the show. Thanks for the super chat.
Pushed harder to create oppressor versus oppressed dynamics for profit than the media. The media have pushed this, whether it's racial, whether it's sexual, whether it's whatever else, inflammatory, divisive rhetoric harder than anyone and profited through the roof for it. But in particular, a lot of this crept in early on for teenagers and teenage magazines, things like Scarlet Teen, which I'll point out, Scarlet is red, which is indicative of communism. Also, Scarlet Teen.
That's
Teen
interesting.
Vogue.
I haven't seen that.
They push very, very
real,
vigorously these
True.
ideas that came straight out of Marxist oppressor versus oppressed cultural analysis of virtually every domain of cultural life. But this goes up through, the reason that if you look at the months preceding the death of George Floyd, which obviously was a media spectacle as well, you see one example after another, after another, after another of them trying to push this systemic racism lie, that this country is systemically racist, and that's the best way to understand the country.
Can James explain what systemic racism means, I wonder? Can my chat explain what systemic racism means? Pop quiz for the chat. What does systemic racism mean? Let's see if my chat is smarter than James Lindsay. Can you guys let me know what systemic racism means in the chat? Yup, systemic racism does mean capitalism. Can you give me a little bit more? Systemic racism means capitalism. It does, exactly, but why does it mean capitalism? It does mean capitalism. Yup, well, yeah, capitalism is defined as private property ownership, but guys, why does systemic racism mean capitalism? That is the question. Why does systemic racism mean capitalism? I know you guys know the answer to this. The system in systemic racism is capitalism. Racism will never be eliminated until capitalism is abolished. What this means is capitalism is the system that upholds racism. If you're talking about the institutional racism, capitalism is the institution that upholds racism. What the left believes is that race was invented when slaves came to America. That's when whiteness was invented, because white people brought black slaves as property to America. The argument is about a private property ownership. That's why the left believes that capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created the institution of slavery in the United States. It created what is known as white people, because before white slave owners brought slaves to America, this is what they believe. I'm not saying what is historically accurate. I'm saying what they believe is that before that, they were identifying as like English or French or Irish or Spanish or like whatever, like German, like whatever. They were identifying based on their ethnicity when they brought white slaves, or they were identifying as Jewish, and but then they brought white slaves to America, and all of a sudden, they brought black slaves to America, and they created a category called white in order to distinguish from black. White meant the property owner, the bourgeois, the capitalist. Black meant the private property, the slave, the oppressed, the proletariat, and it was on the basis of that that systemic disparities were created between the social construct of white people and black people, because they believe it's a social construct, and those systemic disparities are called systemic racism or institutional racism. And the only way to get rid of racism in the United States is to abolish capitalism, which is the system that upholds racism. Capitalism upholds private property ownership. Slavery is private property ownership. Capitalism is the system that upholds racism. Capitalism used private property as it used people as private property. That means slaves. Systemic racism is capitalism because slavery was the ownership of people as private property. That's what that means. Is anyone confused about this? If you're confused, ask questions in the chat. The systemic racism is the system is the cause of racial disparities by producing private property. Let's see. Let me know if anyone has questions about this. What are they going to say when they realize the white male? So they don't actually care about skin color, Patrick. Whiteness is not about skin color, guys. Whiteness is about the private property owner. That's why Larry Elder is the blackface of white supremacy. That's why NPR and the Washington Post talk about multiracial whiteness. That's why they say Kanye West is a white supremacist. That's why they say Jay-Z is a white supremacist. That's why what's her name? Who wrote Whiteness is Property? Cheryl Harris. That's why Cheryl Harris, in a lecture at UCLA Law in 2014 to celebrate the 20th anniversary of her seminal paper for Harvard Law School called Whiteness is Property, explicitly said that black people can be white too, because it is not about your skin color, it's about who owns private property. Whiteness is code for capitalism. That's what that means. Not about white people. It's about capitalism. Let me know if you guys have any questions about that. Let's continue. Let's see what James says systemic racism is.
That's a Marxist doctrine, derived directly from Lenin and Mao and adapted with new words to an American audience who wouldn't recognize it. And so the media have been the biggest purveyors of this divisive oppressor versus
oppressed he doesn't explain it
dynamic of our entire culture.
Okay, and we've discussed, about how lawfare and how the education lawfare, religion, I think, is pretty self-evident in terms of, let's be honest, a political system can be a religion. I've said repeatedly and written about the fact that Jews in America have converted to another religion.
By the way, guys, this is why James Lindsay's audience doesn't know what any of these terms mean, because James literally never explains it. He just says, the lie of systemic racism. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Literally. What does that mean? Why does James expect that every single person out there just knows what the lie of systemic racism means? No one knows what that means until you explain it to them. That's what teaching is, James. You have to explain things to people.
Christianity, but to secular leftism, that has become their religion. So
just a couple points for color, though, on that. By the way, a lot of people don't know critical race theory was a legal doctrine. So critical race theory was designed to infiltrate law specifically.
True.
It spread from there into more cultural elements, but it was started as a legal doctrine. So that's one point. Another point, just to point out, when you bring up religion and spirituality and how you actually put that ahead of education, which, by the way, I do agree with you on that.
Yep.
Gramsci famously said that socialism is precisely, this is a direct quote, socialism is precisely the religion that must overwhelm Christianity. And so that was certainly...
We just entered Gnosticism, folks! We arrived at the Gnosticism. All the fun parts are coming up. Yeah, we're only 20 minutes into this. Holy shit, I've got to stop yapping.
On his mind. And of course, Karl Marx very famously said in the piece that his most famous line that religion is the opiate of the masses.
It begins.
He begins that by saying that the basis of all criticism is the criticism of religion. And so getting religion out of the way in order to invoke a socialist perspective is in fact the spiritual theme of Marxism. And you hear that repeated at the birth of cultural Marxism with Antonio Gramsci. So religion's infiltrated similarly. And like you said, there's you can see this within the secular leftist skew with secular Jews on that side of things. You can see it with the social gospel and liberation
my
theology with
husband just got
Christians
home is what
and
happened.
Catholics. On the other side of things, social gospel started with Baptists. So this infiltration into religious belief has also been extraordinarily effective.
But there's another piece, and we're going to have Angela Vanderplume help.
Okay, let's just do a little prediction. One in the chat if you believe that James will use the word Gnosticism or some derivation of like Gnostic or something like that. Some version of the word Gnosticism. One in the chat if you believe that James will use the word Gnosticism at least once in this interview. Two in the chat if you think that James is going to be able to restrain himself from calling communism Gnostic. Seeing lots of ones in the chat right now. Like literally it's unanimous. Everyone thinks that James is going to use the word Gnostic. All right, let's find out.
Joining us in a little bit. There's another piece that people don't, I think, realize, and I'd like to get your
The
thoughts on
lone
it.
contrarian.
We are constantly,
Just the only two.
we're aware, those of us who are involved in the profession of religion, for lack of a better term, that there's been a war on religion going on for a while. And it's a manifestation of this cultural Marxism that you're discussing. And we're aware that it's generally been coming from the left. And historically, over the last 30 years, it has been. The left has been attacking us. It's the secularism, the leftism,
Now I'll say this. The reason that Rabbi Barclay is complaining about the left is because the left does not support Israel. The left does not support Israel. The left are not Zionists. They're not anti-Semitic in the way that he's going to say they are, because he defines anti-Semitism as anything that doesn't support Israel. But the left absolutely does not support Israel, which is why he's like on this train with James to talk about how much the left sucks.
Teenagers recently had to they're taking a junior college class, and they were actually asked, they had to answer questions, and you were either one of 5 categories, but the 2 conservative categories, one was a committed conservative and the other was a flag and faith freedom conservative. I mean, just the whole languaging of putting it. So we know that an education is coming from the left, etc. But I actually think there's, in some ways, a more insidious and dangerous place where it's also coming from religion, which is this woke right crazies.
Oh!
The Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Jake Shields. And I think
Guys. Do you know what the real problem is? Do you know what the real problem is? According to Rabbi Barclay, the real problem is not that the far left controls every K-12 school in the country. The real problem is not that the far left is making constant attacks on parental rights to try to undermine the nuclear family. The real problem is not that the far left is trying to convince kids that they are gender queer, gender non-binary, all this stuff in order to abolish the gender binary, which is men and women, because that's an attack on the nuclear family. The real problem is not any of that. Guys, do you know what the real problem is? The real problem is Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields and Candace Owens and all of these evil people that are debating whether or not Winston Churchill was a hero or a villain. That is the real problem. It is the woke right. The woke right is undermining everything, guys. It is all these evil people that are daring to ask questions about Winston Churchill and World War II. That is more important than the left taking over the schools. That is more important than attacks on parental rights. That is more important than kids cutting off fucking body parts. The real problem, guys, is Nick Fuentes. He is a destroyer of worlds. He is the most evil thing that has ever been created in the history of humanity. He is the real villain here. That rabbi is woke, the pot calling the kettle black. Yep. Let's just experience that moment. Let's just experience this again. Okay. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to let them talk, and I'm gonna keep the laughing and the mockery to as minimal as I can. Look how serious James looks right there. Okay, everyone ready? Let's do it.
The Nick Fuentes,
Definitely.
Candace Owens, Jake Shields. And I think you know my history with Candace Owens and her craziness and Nick Fuentes. These people they're just, in Yiddish we have a word, mashugana. And they know nothing about their own theology. I mean, I was a professor with priests for years at Loyola. And they're using the theology incorrectly to...
Yeah, same.
It's
same
kind of
guy.
like a woke right.
Yeah.
Now, is that not also a manifestation of cultural Marxism in a different way, is in an inverse reflection?
Yeah. Nick Fuentes is a manifestation of cultural Marxism. All right. Let's listen to James say that yes, Nick Fuentes is a manifestation of cultural Marxism.
I mean, how does
Yeah,
that
of
relate
course.
into this
So-
dialogue?
Yeah, well, whatever.
Absolutely.
James.
I go back to the well, I could go back to two major characters in Marxism, Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, to make the point very succinctly. Karl Marx, like I already said,
Yeah.
starts the Communist Manifesto
James
by saying that the
seriously thinks
movement of
that.
history is
Yeah.
the contention of antagonistic classes. So you need antagonistic classes in conflict. And so if you can do as Vladimir Lenin said, is that the best way to control the opposition is to become the opposition yourself. If you can actually step into that space and make it so that you have two woke factions, a woke left and a woke right, that are the primary things fighting one another, the commies and the fascists,
Nick
then
Fuentes isn't fighting
normal
the
people just get left in the wash.
Bro. James seems to be under the mistaken impression that Nick Fuentes is highly focused on the communist left. Now, Nick Fuentes doesn't like the communist left, but Nick Fuentes has, I mean, what James, do you not understand what National Socialism is? I mean, Nick Fuentes' primary enemy is not the woke. James's entire premise here is that if you have a woke right fighting a woke left, that is exactly what Karl Marx wanted. Nick Fuentes isn't fighting the woke left. Nick Fuentes is fighting the conservative right. Now, Nick doesn't like the woke left. Nick doesn't even really like the term the woke left. But Nick doesn't like the left. Nick doesn't like the communists. Nick doesn't want the leftist communists to win. But right now, Nick Fuentes is fighting the conservative right, James. He's fighting people like you. You are the problem, James. Carlin, how do you feel now that you're part of the woke right? Do you wish you were as based as James Lindsay and Rabbi Barclay? Here's the thing, rationalist. Here's the thing. That woke people change definitions of terms all the time. And I think it's got to be fundamentally one of our rules that we will never, ever, 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 ever accept the definitions of terms that woke people give us. And so James and Rabbi Barclay are fundamentally changing the definition of woke right because they are on the woke right. They're the ones struggle sessioning people. They're the ones canceling people for disagreeing with them. They're the ones who want to be in charge of what ideas people are allowed to consider, what questions people are allowed to ask, what words are allowed to come out of their mouths, what thoughts you're allowed to have, what conversations you're allowed to have. They're the ones that are trying to censor people. I'm not trying to censor people. I don't give a flying fuck what conversations people have. I'm going to make fun of James when he is wrong, and he is obviously wrong and needs to sit in his wrongness and be wrong. But I don't care if James Lindsay has this conversation on the internet. What we're seeing here is literally the ironclad law of woke projection in action. So I fundamentally reject the idea that I or Nick Fuentes or Jake Shields or Candace Owens or anyone that James Lindsay disagrees with is on the woke right, because we're not the ones trying to censor people. We're not the ones trying to cancel people. We're not the ones trying to struggle session people. We're not the ones trying to silence people. We're not the ones saying we are going to tell you what questions you're allowed to ask and what questions you're not allowed to ask. And we're not the ones saying here are the ideas that you're allowed to consider and here are the ideas you're not allowed to consider. That's what woke is. And I don't believe I subscribe to that, but I believe James does. I just want to get a clip of this real quick, guys. Hang on. Let me just get a clip real quick of them talking about this, because I kind of want to put this on Twitter. Hang on. Let me get my little clippy clip machine. Bear with me, please.
Etc. But I actually think there's, in some ways, a more insidious and dangerous place where it's also coming from religion, which is this woke right crazies. The Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Jake Shields. And I think you know my history with Candace Owens and her craziness, and Nick Fuentes. These people they're just, in Yiddish we have a word, mashugana, and they know nothing about their own theology. I mean, I was a professor with priests for years at Loyola, and they're using the theology incorrectly it's kind of like a woke right. Now, is that not also a manifestation of cultural Marxism in a different way, is in an inverse reflection? I mean, how does that relate into this dialogue?
Absolutely. I go back to I could go back to two major characters in Marxism, Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, to make the point very succinctly. Karl Marx, like I already said, starts the Communist Manifesto by saying that the movement of history is the contention of antagonistic classes. So you need antagonistic classes in conflict. And so if you can do as Vladimir Lenin said, is that the best way to control the opposition is to become the opposition yourself. If you can actually step into that space and make it so that you have two woke factions, a woke left and a woke right, that are the primary things fighting one another, the commies and the fascists, then normal people just get left in the wash. They're just not even there. So that actually churns what's called the dialectic, or of Karl Marx's dialectical materialism, but in this case in a cultural realm. So it's more like a dialectical cultural war. And so, yes, of course, not only would they produce a reaction and provoke to produce that reaction, which is in the leftists' activist manuals like Beautiful Trouble and Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, to provoke the other side to become the thing you need to fight. Not only would they do that, but they would also directly infiltrate and pay people to be that. That's Lenin's instruction, to become the opposition yourself.
Okay, wait, time out. I gotta, because you're inferring something that I want to be, I don't want to in any way misinterpret. Okay, if I'm understanding what you've just said, you're saying that as part of the cultural Marxist revolution, for lack of a better term of it, you have this far left that is going to create an antagonist to provoke each other, to create the change in culture. And that's correct so far, correct? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. And that to really do that, you would even do to the extent of the far left saying, what we're going to call it the woke left, for argument's sake,
sure,
that the woke left is now going to, you just suggested, pay to create a woke right as an antagonist. Did I hear that right from you? Did I hear that correctly?
Absolutely. I don't have any evidence that such people are being paid, so I'm not claiming that, but I am saying that this is consonant with communist praxis. And again, I'll give you two examples. Vladimir Lenin also famously says in his
all right.
The State and Revolution.
James is like, I don't have any evidence that they're being paid by the left, but it kind of makes sense that maybe they'd be paid by the left. I didn't see that coming. Hang on, let me just get this clip real quick, guys. I want to put this on Twitter now. Hang on, bear with me. Please mount the like button for me, guys. Let me know what you're thinking about all this in the chat. I just need to edit this up real quick. Please allow me just a couple minutes to do this, to make it all nice and pretty before we put it on the Twitters, to say, hey, James Lindsay just said that Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields and Candace Owens were on the woke left, and that they're probably being paid, and that he doesn't have any evidence they're being paid, but they're probably being paid by the left. James is saying, pinky swear, trust me, bro. Wow. Hang on, guys, just one more second here. I just need to edit this real quick to get a starting and an ending point at it. Okay. There we go. There we go. There we go. All right, hang on. Let me just make sure this looks good. All right, let me just export this. We're going to call this James being an idiot. And by the way, again, like, if people don't understand, like, Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields are not actually really that interested in the left right now. I would like them to be interested in the left someday. But the thing is, and I actually think this is the correct position, is that the biggest challenge to defeating the left is the conservative right. It is the conservative establishment. And so, like, to say, for James to actually insinuate that these people are just propped up by the woke right was created to create conflict with the woke left, it's like, they're not even interested in the left. They don't even talk about the left. Not really. They spend all their time talking about the right. Let me just look in the chat, see what you guys are saying while this is exporting. Yeah, and James is making the claim that they're getting paid, but he also admits, I have no evidence that they're being paid. I'm just insinuating that they're probably being paid. All right, let's keep going.
Which is his most well-read book. He published it in 1917, right before the October Revolution. And he says explicitly over and over and over again in that book that the purpose or the method by which things will be achieved is through sending what he calls agitation and propaganda. The summary word we use for that is agitprop, to send agitation and propaganda, not merely among the workers, he said. He said that's what Marx got wrong. It won't work. You have to send agitation and propaganda amongst all classes of society. So you have to embed agitation to try to do exactly the kinds of things we see Candace Owens doing, agitation and propaganda, to disturb every single class, including the opposing classes. And so that's based in Lenin's directions for praxis. And then we have a very famous remark. I think it's Charles Bukowski, but I'd have to double check the reference on this. But the exact quote is, dress like a Republican so you can talk like an anarchist. And that is a much more recent indication of how it's quoted on Beautiful Trouble. That's where I picked it up, which is the leftist activist training manual available for you online at beautifultrouble.org. I recommend everybody go look. Dress as a Republican so you can talk as an anarchist.
So I'm gonna take this. If we can invite Angela Vanderplume, who I think is here. Angela, are you around there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. How are you guys?
Oh,
So
yes.
well, thank you. So James, every time we do one of these episodes of Rabbi's Table, the idea is that it comes from a Yiddish concept that you're sitting around the rabbi's table having discussion, just like you would around a meal or anything else, except we're not actually physically eating with each other, or et cetera. And so each week we have some people who come in, Angela being one of them. Angela, I know you wanted to get into this idea of the woke right as well, that you wanted to speak a little bit about this with James. So if we can maybe, what did you want to add? Because you also just came back from the Republican Jewish Convention that was in Vegas.
I did. I was just in Vegas this week.
Yeah, so Rationalist says, it's honestly exhausting how James keeps linking everything back to intellectuals of the 20th century. History can be informative, but is by no means a determinant of present trajectories. That is really that is my argument in a nutshell, which is that just because something happens in academia doesn't mean that thing actually shows up in the real world. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of things happen in academia, and I don't know if people don't realize this if they've never been in academia and haven't accessed this type of information. A lot of stuff happens in academia that just never makes it into the real world. Academia is it's like there's so much crazy shit that's published in academia, and you can find stuff in journals that's absolutely insane, but then 3 people have read it and the activists don't act on it, and they're not teaching it in the real world, and they're not using it in the real world, and they don't even really write books on it in the real world or give conference presentations. The people who are pushing these ideas, they aren't prominent in any way in the real world, and it's kind of like, if it's not showing up in the real world, there's a reason for that, and people need to distinguish between what is showing up in the real world and what is not. I'm just waiting for this video to export, guys, and I want to put it on Twitter. It is done exporting. I'm just waiting for it to load, really. And then we can move on. Why isn't the video loading? Why can't I see it? That's bullshit. The video is done exporting, but it's not showing up on my desktop for some reason. One sec. Thank you for allowing me to do a real-time clip, because that was funny. All right, I got it. All right, one more sec. Just got to upload it. Actually, I'll let this play.
It was a great time. It's great to see fellow Jews finally leave the Democratic Party and stop hurting themselves and voting for things that are in our favor. But I wanted to focus on the educational aspect just a little bit. And here's why. So a lot of people say, hey, like I see CRT happening. I see this like trans awareness, this gender ideology, but it's always happening in blue states. But that's just not true.
That's not true.
And this isn't, I'm not attacking Ron DeSantis when I say this. I think that when he did the parental rights and education bill, that was a great first step, but it was a first step. In 2022, I wrote an expose. I got into the Miami-Dade school system. And while he did get rid of things like the 1619 Project, I got into the lesson plans, and he didn't get rid of things like the Zine Project, which is
she's literally reporting on something I reported on a year and a half ago. You don't say Ron DeSantis didn't get rid of the Zine Education Project. You don't say. Does anyone want to take a guess at what socialist that we know intimately is on the board of the Zine Education Project? Because I was screaming about this after I went undercover at the socialism conference last year, because this particular socialist who is on the board of the Zine Education Project was at the socialism conference talking about how they are doing fugitive pedagogy or smuggler pedagogy in Florida to teach banned ideas in Florida. Jesse Hagopian. Jesse Hagopian is on the board of the Zine Education Project. So she's actually correct. These ideas are being taught in Florida. These ideas have always been taught in Florida. And Jesse Hagopian is one of the representatives of the fucking Zine Education Project that's going around at conferences bragging about the fact that they're doing it. And I sent all this to Ron DeSantis' office over a year ago. And they never looked at it because they never cared about actually stopping this ideology. They just cared about having political talking points. Again?
School system. And while he did get rid of things like the 1619 Project, I got into the lesson plans, and he didn't get rid of things like the Zine Project, which is the predecessor to the 1619 Project. You know, James can go into this, but Howard Zinn wrote The People's History of the United States, which is a lot where the oppressed versus oppressor lens comes from. I like to say without really credible sources, because a lot of it just says, oh, some people said this is what happened. Anyways, so we have all of this education that's been in there, and this is a red, well, purple state, but red state. They have gender ideology that was still there. So he covered K through, I believe it was third grade, but 4th through 12, they still had genderqueer. They had gender identity. They had gender as your guide. They had GSA week, which is the Gay Straight Alliance clubs, but they had Trans Awareness Week, where all of the teachers would come in and they would go with them and teach them about trans. They'd have PowerPoints about gender ideology. I mean, I did like 3 exposés on this, and this was all happening in states like Florida, not necessarily blue state. It's not like Illinois. I'm from Chicago. I would expect that there. So it's very infiltrated in all of our systems, specifically in the education system. And then they go off to college, and college is a free-for-all, right? Lord knows what's happening there now. You have the Marxists, you have the Islamists. By the time they're in college, they're fully indoctrinated. So it's not just the left, it's the right too. And they're hitting all of us, and they're doing it to ruin the social fabric of our society.
So Angela, that's the education part, but you said to me that you'd want to talk a little about woke right. I know Karis will as well later. Did you?
Look at this asshole. Look at this asshole. This woman, and like, God bless her, man. God bless her, because she's actually the first person I've heard talking about this, because I've been screaming about this for over a year. I couldn't get anyone else to talk about this. So bless her for actually going into the curriculum and looking at what's going on. She lays out this whole thing, and she's like, you know, in red states, they're telling parents that they're not teaching this stuff anymore. They're actually still teaching this stuff, and there's evidence that they're teaching this stuff, and we should probably tell people that they're teaching this stuff, and the rabbi doesn't give a fuck. The rabbi doesn't care. The rabbis, but what about the woke right? Can we talk about the woke right? Because, you know, we don't really care about this education. We don't really, you know, they're just learning that they're genderqueer and all this stuff, and they're just learning all this crazy stuff from the Zine Education Project, which is a socialist organization. You know, that's all nice, sweetie. That's nice. But can we talk about the woke right, please? Can you please give me a comment on Nick Fuentes? This is the problem. This is the problem.
You want to get into that at all with James? In terms of the right, the woke right that we've discussed?
Sure. I mean, I've also seen a lot of infiltration on the right. I mean, if you want to talk about Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens, Jake Shields, Nick Fuentes has this thing with the Groypers, and it's a heavy Jew hatred, but their main objective right now, which I find to be really weird, is this Chrislam movement. It's this Christian Islamic alliance.
No.
Where they're teaming up and they say, hey, we can team up together. And
this interview was just released like hours ago. Nick Fuentes 2 days ago got all pissed off on an interview with Sneeko because Sneeko tried to convince Nick that he was a Muslim, and Nick's like, no, I'm fucking not a Muslim. Are you serious? You think that the most important thing that Nick Fuentes is trying to pursue right now is an alliance with Muslims? Do any of these people bother to actually listen to the people they talk about?
Candace Owens, Jake Shields, Nick Fuentes has this thing with the Groypers, and it's a heavy Jew hatred, but their main objective right now, which I find to be really weird, is this Chrislam movement.
By the way, their main objective actually seems to be influencing Trump in a more conservative direction. That's actually their main objective. Nick barely even talks about Muslims.
It's this Christian Islamic alliance where they're teaming up and they say, hey, we can team up together and we can go against the Jews. We can go against this. Follow us. We'll be a big team. And essentially, at its core, just fails. I do see him leading the youth. You know, he says the most outlandish things, but I think that the youth is so disillusioned, right? So we can't afford anything anymore. We can't afford our apartments. We have student loans. We have all these things. And he's saying, hey, I have a solution, and everybody's listening to him.
That's not what he's saying.
Even though he's a voice online, he is a major voice for Gen Z.
So this woman doesn't even know what she's talking. This is part of the problem. She actually did research into school curriculums. I want you guys to see how fucked up this is. She actually took the time to do research into school curriculums in red states. And she sounded highly intelligent in the first part of this, where she was like, hey guys, maybe we should tell people that far left ideas are still being taught in school curriculums in places like Florida, because Ron DeSantis has given the idea that we banned all this stuff, but in fact we didn't ban all this stuff, and it's still being taught, and here's how they're teaching it, and here's the things you need to know. It was actually a highly intelligent introduction to all of this. But the rabbi wasn't interested in any of that. He just wanted her to complain about Nick Fuentes, and she doesn't really know anything about Nick Fuentes other than maybe things she's heard in clips here and there. She obviously doesn't actually listen to Nick Fuentes. She obviously doesn't follow him, because if she did, you would know that Nick barely talks about Muslims. Like, every once in a while, he's kind of dabble with this idea, but, like, really, it's not a big part of his talking points at all. You would know that, like, most of the stuff she's saying is just, like, it's just made up. Nick is actually not even providing any real solutions, if I'm honest about it. That what they spend most of their time talking about is the Trump campaign. That what they're talking about is the fact that Trump is not conservative. Trump has abandoned them. They want Trump to get rid of all immigration. They want Trump to Oh gosh, what is the other thing? Fire Chris Lasavitas and Susie Wiles. They want Trump. I mean, here is really the big thing. They want Trump to commit to no war with Iran. And this is going to be a big problem for Rabbi Barclay, because Rabbi Barclay is on the team of Israel, and they want to use the United States to go to war with Iran because Israel doesn't like Iran, and so they want the United States to do their bidding. And that's really why they don't like Nick Fuentes, and that's really why they're talking about this Muslim thing. But like, what she's saying is not hinged into reality because she obviously hasn't looked into it. But that, of course, is what Rabbi Barclay is really interested in and really thinks is important. Yeah, this was a bait and switch. She obviously thought that she was being brought on to talk about the schools, but Rabbi Barclay didn't want to talk about the schools. He wanted her to bitch and complain about Nick Fuentes. Yeah, I'm second guessing that that whole idea. That's probably not going to happen.
So James, maybe you can guide people through something that Angela, and thank you, Angela, that she just mentioned, which is how much of this is, as we look at the woke right, because I really would like to spend a little bit of time on this, why the woke right is manifesting a vitriolic anti-Semitism, and I don't even like that term, a vitriolic Jew hatred that rivals anything we have seen in centuries. And I mean that because the hatred, even in many ways, transcends the hatred that was, in Nazi Germany. So maybe you can explain why, whether it's Candace Owens, Jake Shields, why Tucker Carlson is bringing on a fake historian to talk about
a fake historian.
Craziness.
A fake historian because he has different ideas.
Maybe you can add a little bit to that.
Fake
well,
historian.
I can, and there are.
Oh, here we go.
It's again, we're in this murky position. Just to start with the disclaimer, which is never a strong thing to do, but they're in this murky position where we don't have any evidence that anybody's being paid or that anybody is a operative or any of this kind of thing. Although people seem to be acting in ways that are consonant with being operatives or being paid assets of.
Yeah, James heavily implying we don't know that they're being paid. There's no evidence that they're being paid, but it kind of seems like they're being paid, doesn't it? Doesn't it kind of seem like they're being paid? I mean, can we be honest here? It kind of seems like they're being paid. Pinky swear, trust me, bro. They kind of, just because we don't have no evidence doesn't mean they're not being paid. Can we all agree that it kind of seems like they're being paid? A lot is supposed to diagnosing the problem according to them, but zero solutions applicable to the real world, just preaching and grifting. Yup, ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Guys, if you're appreciating this stream and you want to throw a $5, $10 super chat my way for putting up with this so that you guys can see what is going on and mocking them to the very best of my ability, please feel free to do so. We do have a super chat goal that helps keep me in business. I do really appreciate it. And minimally, mount the like button for me. That'd be pretty great. That's the craziest thing I've heard. I don't care about Jews one way or the other, but to say today's hatred is worse than that which led to the Holocaust is nuts. Yeah. Well, in fact, James is actually, that's a really great point. That's a really great point. Because there is one paid operative in this video, at least one. I don't know what that Rabbi Barclay is being paid. But we do absolutely know that James Lindsay is being paid by Moms for Liberty and by Turning Point USA and God knows who else. Now, we don't have any evidence that James is being paid by anyone else, and we would never want to imply that James is being paid by someone else. But we absolutely know that James is being paid by Moms for Liberty and by Turning Point USA. So it does seem like there is one paid operative in this situation, Jimmy. Hey, thanks, Andrew, for the super chat. Thanks, Sid the Cat. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. Thank you for supporting my streaming habit. I appreciate it.
There are many possible suspects here, right? We have reasons to suspect our own government might put people up to things like this in order to create division and the Ray Epps situation with January 6th.
Yeah, Nick
which,
Fuentes
by the way,
is basically
Nick
Ray
Fuentes
Epps.
did exactly the same thing and also got in no trouble for.
Nick
is
Fuentes
one
is a bad
possible
guys.
example to look at. That we also can guess with the rise of this Islamic or Islamist, or however we want to phrase it, terrorism, that entities like Qatar might be, or Iran might be interested in funding people. We know that there are Russians that are
I wish I
attempting
was
to
funded by
sow
Iran.
discontent and discord among the American conservative movement. And now we have Putin.
I wish I was funded by Iran or Qatar. That's a joke. Thank you, Tolkien fan. I am 100% grassroots funded, and I will always be grassroots funded because that is the only way that you can be sure that they won't be able to F with your life. And so, thank you for allowing me to be grassroots funded. But I'm not gonna lie. Like, that Qatari money would be pretty rad. Like, that, Lauren Shen turned out to be a Russian spy, and I don't actually feel bad. I'm not mad at her. I'm not mad at her. Lauren Shen got that Russian cash, and, not mad at her at all. Don't care.
Having just come out and said that he prefers Kamala Harris and Tim.
Hey, Kristen, thank you for the super chat. Happy birthday, Kristen! Everyone wish Kristen in the chat a happy birthday. Kristen, I hope you have a great time in Florida. Happy birthday to you. Enjoy every minute of it. We appreciate you being here.
Waltz for president, which would actually match with sowing discord. So we know that this is we know that the Chinese spend an exorbitant amount of money to do political warfare. $16 billion a year is their military budget to do political warfare only against the United States, influence operations. It'd be shocking if none of that money is getting dumped into this kind of divisive thing on the right. But
you know what really like bothers me about this whole thing is like their whole premise. They said this with Lauren Chen. They're saying this now with Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields and Candace Owens. Their whole premise is they're being paid to create divisions. What's implied in that? What's implied in that? The implication is you are not allowed to talk about unpopular ideas. The implication is if you're talking about unpopular ideas, then you are a paid asset of Iran and Qatar and Russia. And this is coming from the right. This is why James is on the woke right. He's literally saying, all of these dissident ideas, they're just creating division, guys. They're just creating division. And we should be focused on unity. And unity, to James and his friends, means we all have to have the same ideas. I don't want to have the same ideas. I don't want to be told I have to have the same ideas. I don't want to be told what ideas I can consider, what questions I can ask. I don't want you to be told that either. It is not divisive to have conversations with people who have crazy ideas. That is not divisive. And the fact that that's the basis of this entire conversation, that the only reason people care that someone might be, and they're starting a rumor that someone's getting paid by a foreign government, even though they don't really have any evidence of that, they're saying they're dividing us. They're dividing us, guys. They're talking about ideas that we don't have. Oh my God. That is the very definition of fucking woke, James. That is what woke is. That you think that you're in charge of what people can consider. That you think you're in charge of who people can talk to. That you think you're in charge of who people can listen to. That's one of the craziest things of all. And it is crazy to me that the right just seems to completely not get this at all. Because I remember what the right was like 4 years ago when they were like, we're a big tent that believe in freedom and individual liberties, and we want to be able to talk about things that would get us banned on the internet. And now they're literally come out and saying, if you're thinking about divisive ideas, then you are paid for by Iran. It's like, nah, bro. Nah. Sometimes people just disagree with you. Sometimes people just want to think about ideas or consider ideas or watch a video about an idea, and maybe they don't even end up agreeing with that idea, but they want to be able to consider it and look at evidence. Didn't James say in the speech we watched that he was going to go to Korea? Yeah, James, who paid you to go to Korea to give a speech? Because you went to Korea less than a month ago, James. Who paid you to go to Korea to give a speech? I know you didn't just go to Korea for free. I know someone paid for that plane ticket. I know someone paid for that hotel. I know you have a minimum of $5,000 speaking fee, James. I know your speaking fee because I saw an email from your organization when someone else asked about your speaking fee. And I know you charge a minimum of $5,000 per speech. So who paid for you to go give a speech in Korea, James?
explanations, one of which doesn't require any of that, and one of which follows from the, I think, shrewd assumption that at least some of that is occurring. We'll start with that. I think it's naive to believe that the right is not somehow paid controlled opposition to some degree, or that such elements don't exist. With that, it's, I think, very simple. I mean, Candace Owens pushed her Christ is King narrative extraordinarily forcefully on October 8th last year. That's not exactly a coincidence, in my opinion. I can't prove that somebody told her to do it. I can't tell if it's just something she decided to do for herself, but it's very clear that you just had a mass event that was going to drive large numbers of Jews, and I would suggest large numbers of Jews with large amounts of money, into confusion and into concern, especially as all the protests started to erupt on campus, visibly left-wing.
Well, the protests didn't start to erupt on campuses until like April or May of last year, James. The protests were erupting in the speech. They were not erupting on college campuses until April or May. You're talking about October 8th. But the bigger question here is, why would Jews get so pissed off at someone saying Christ is king? Why would Jews have any issue with a Christian person, a Catholic in Candace Owens' case, allegedly? And I don't necessarily believe that Candace Owens is a Catholic, but she says she is, so why don't we just go down that road? Why would Jews be so offended over a Catholic woman saying Christ is king? Why is that going to get people all up in arms? Why does anyone care? I'm not a Christian. I don't care if Candace Owens says Christ is king. That means nothing to me. I don't care if Nick Fuentes says Christ is king. I don't care if the Groypers say Christ is king. Doesn't bother me at all. Why would it bother the Jews, James? Because that's literally what you're saying.
Visible left-wing Jew hatred that I've been warning about for years since I read about it in the critical race theory books, that was just going to, and the fact that Angela Davis said she was radicalized twice, once by Herbert Marcuse at UCSD and once when she went to Palestine.
True.
Like, this has been a boiling pot on the left for a long time. So anyway, why October 8th? Well, you're going to have a large number of Jews with their influence, with their votes, with their money, who are suddenly seeking a new political home because the Democratic Party looks awfully scary, given how the radical left is going to respond, or was going to respond to...
The radical left are not part of the Democratic Party, James. Why do you keep lying to people about that?
Not specifically October 7th, but the Israeli retaliation, which I referred to as Gaza Floyd, immediately. I saw what was going on there. You have the new victim class that the left is going to rally around, and it's Gaza. Therefore, their oppressor, which is now going to be Israel, and
Gaza Floyd. James called the Israeli response in Gaza Floyd. You know why I have a problem with that? The reason I have a problem with that is that Israel has killed over 40,000 people in Gaza, you asshole. Israel has murdered over 40,000 people in Gaza. 40,000, James. And if you look at what happened on October 7th, a portion of those people that sadly died in Israel, and I'm not making excuses for any deaths. I think that Hamas murdering people is just as bad as Israel murdering Palestinians. I think that all of this shit is bad. So I'm not excusing Hamas. I'm not apologizing for Hamas. I denounce all terrorism, anything. I denounce all war. I denounce all foreign intervention for anyone. However, on October 7th, when 1,200 people died in Israel, Israel killed a portion of their own people, James. It's called the fucking Hannibal Directive. Look it up. So are you going to denounce Israel for that? And why are you insinuating that 40,000 dead in Gaza is a proportional response for what Hamas did to Israel? It is a completely fucking disproportional response, and they're not even done yet, and they're not going to be done until they excommunicate all the fucking Palestinians from Gaza, because they want that land, and they're doing the same fucking thing in the West Bank because they want that land. This is literally a war over fucking land, James. And you want to call it Gaza Floyd? Gaza Floyd? Are you fucking kidding me? It really burns me that these shill influencers on the conservative right, and they've been doing this shit, Israel has been doing this shit to the Palestinians for generations. It really burns me that people on the right do not even view the Palestinians as human beings, and yet they claim to be the ones in the position of moral superiority. They literally view the Palestinians as sub-fucking human. They view Palestinians as worthless fucking beasts, that it's totally okay to wipe them off the map because Israel. And by the way, the United States is supposed to pay money to Israel as we're doing this, and the United States is supposed to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel. Gaza, Floyd. Gaza, Floyd. Unfucking believable. But remember, guys, I'm on the woke right for saying that, according to James Lindsay and I know I don't have that, and thank God I don't have the profile of Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens, so probably I will never be identified with these people, which actually suits me just fine. I'm so fine with flying under the radar. It's not even funny. But remember that for every single thing I just said, I'm considered to be on the woke right. Because I don't think that Israel killing 40,000 Palestinians, half of which are women and children, is just a Gaza Floyd incident. Unbelievable.
Its allies in the United States and Britain are the main enemies. And why would you push a narrative, Christ is King, which is, for most people, perhaps a badly worded statement of approximate Christian theology. It does say that Christ is King of Kings, but actually Christ is Lord, which is, we don't have to get into the theology. Christ is not meant to be a worldly king. But at any rate, why would you do that? To make sure that those dislocated Jews feel uncomfortable coming to the Republican Party, knowing that there's a gigantic mythology that the Republican Party has deep-seated anti-Semitism and will.
James Lindsay thinks that Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes are paid shills to make sure that Jews don't come to the Republican Party. I'm sorry. I can no longer take anyone who takes James Lindsay seriously. I will not take you seriously if you consider James Lindsay to be a serious person. I will not take you seriously if you consider James Lindsay to be a serious academic. I will not take you seriously if you believe that James Lindsay is intellectually honest. Are you shitting me? He's implying that Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields are paid by the left to make sure that the Jews don't want to go to the Republican Party? Bruh. Or paid by some foreign entity to make sure that Jews don't want to go to the Republican Party?
Give a pass to so-called very fine people. I'm gonna try and see if I follow the timeline you just suggested. There is a desire or a need for the Marxist revolution, the cultural Marxism, to have antagonistic relationships in order to keep that going. October 7th happens, and all the horrors from it. And I will tell you point blank that on October 8th, every liberal Jew that I know, their head was exploding. Their head was absolutely exploding because they didn't believe it could happen. They didn't believe it could happen in their generation. They can't believe that Biden's incompetence actually led to this. They realized this was never an issue with Trump, and so their heads were exploding. And they did for about a month or two until it was on the rearview mirror and they became unconscious of it again. So you're saying October 7th happens, this horrible event happens. It's clear that this is going to shift Jews out of the Democratic Party, finally, that they're going to realize
This is not going to happen.
Wow.
And so Candace Owens, and to quote her, why can't we just explore this, right? Isn't that, we can explore anything, right?
You can explore anything, but this is okay.
So you're saying that
so they're
in whatever
they're
way,
literally saying that Candace Owens would try to censor them from having this conversation, but it's like, no, bro, please have this conversation. Please show us how retarded and deluded you actually are. Please.
she is guided by on October 8th to come up with a mantra that is actually antithetical to Catholicism and Christianity, which, because as you say, it's not Christ is king, it's that Christ is Lord. He is the King of Kings, Malach Malachim. He is literally the King of Kings.
I just cannot even believe that we're hearing this right now. Dragon Balls! James Lindsay is the last person to educate anyone on theology, anyone on cultural Marxism, anyone on the family. He is the father of the woke. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, my God. James, that's it. Dragon Balls, that's it. James Lindsay is the father of the woke right. James Lindsay is it's true though. It's true. Oh my God, we need to make a meme for that. James Lindsay is like the father of the woke right. He's like, we need to make a meme with James where he's like, he looks like Jesus or so. He looks like we need to make a meme of James where he looks like a cult leader. And then everyone underneath him, like Konstantin Kisin and Gad Sad and Jordan Peterson and Rabbi Barclay and all the other woke right people, we need to make a meet like where James is like hovering over all of them and they're all underneath. So dead on, bro. So dead on. Thank you for that inspiration. Rottweiler, James just said Christ is king means king of this world. Just because he's speaking to a rabbi, talk about being duplicitous. Holy crap. Yeah, I mean, they're talking about, like, I think, like, Jesus, it's like, why do they even care? Neither of these people are Christians. Why do they care what Christians do? Hi, Ohio Groiper, are you enjoying this massive shit show? They're talking about how Nick is on the woke right.
Theology, and she starts going down a path of theological idiocy. It's not Catholicism. It's not Christianity. It's ignorance about text.
Wow.
I don't comment on Christian scriptures because I'm not fluent in Greek. When people start making comments on the Hebrew scriptures and they have no idea what they're talking about, they're just idiots. And they should stay in what they do, stay in their field. And you're saying that whole process going down with her, Jake Shields, now Tucker Carlson, all of it, Holocaust denying. Oh, why can't we just explore Joseph Mengele didn't make these tapes? Oh, why can't we just question whether the Holocaust ever happened, etc. And by the way, she's very smart. She doesn't say that she's a Holocaust denier. She just doesn't accept that 6 million Jews died. That is a Holocaust denier.
So again,
if,
we keep hearing this definition from rabbis. Rabbi Shmuley said this. Now Rabbi Barclay is saying this, is that you are a Holocaust denier if you believe that any less than 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Now, I, of course, believe that exactly 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Not one person left. I absolutely believe that it is an historically indisputable fact that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, and I don't want anyone else to paint me any other way. I absolutely believe that not one single Jew less than 6 million died in the Holocaust, all right? I just want to make sure that's very clear because I am on YouTube, and it's important to make sure it's very clear as long as I'm streaming on YouTube that I believe that absolutely exactly 6 million people, Jews specifically, died in the Holocaust. Okay, you don't have any argument from me on that. But I am also saying that I don't think that someone who says 5 million Jews died in the Holocaust is denying the Holocaust. I don't think that someone who says that 2 million Jews died in the Holocaust is denying the Holocaust. I don't even think that someone who says that maybe around 200,000 to 300,000 Jews died in the Holocaust, like, I don't even think that's Holocaust denial either. Because can we just be honest and say that 200,000 to 300,000 people is still like a lot of people, and all death is tragic. Those are 200,000 to 300,000 people. Like, and I'm not saying I believe that. I'm saying that some other people, including the Red Cross, believe that. But like I'm saying that that's still a lot of death, and saying that a lot of people died is not denying an event. It's just saying, I think a lot of people died. I don't think it's this number exactly, but I think a lot of people died. That's not denying the Holocaust. But I, of course, believe that absolutely, you're probably right. 6,000,001. You're probably right. Not less than 6,000,001 Jews died in the Holocaust. Bot, that's Holocaust denial. We don't allow that here, bot. No engaging in Holocaust denial on my channel. I disavow. Bot, if you keep denying the Holocaust in my chat, I'm going to have to block you, okay? It's nothing personal. But we don't entertain that tomfoolery here, all right?
If I'm hearing you right, and I want to make sure I am, that whole choreographed plot line is choreographed, number one, with a specific agenda that ties into cultural Marxism, that the woke rights outline, their process, their game plan, their procedures is actually part of the cultural Marxism and planned in that way. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, because
Oh my God!
the left needs the left to win.
He just said it again. He just said it again. He just said that the woke right is part of cultural Marxism. Let's just go back and listen to that again, because that was just fucking beautiful. Oh my God.
That is a Holocaust denier. But if I'm hearing you right, and I want to make sure I am, that whole choreographed plot line is choreographed, number one, with a specific agenda that ties into cultural Marxism, that the woke rights outline, their process, their game plan, their procedures is actually part of the cultural Marxism and planned in that way. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, because the left needs the left to win. They need the Democrats to win. So if you're going to have this matriculation from Democrat to Republican, a Jewish exit of the Democratic Party following October 7th and everything that came after, then you have to have something set up. And this is the conspiracy side of the story, by the way. There's a non-conspiracy side of the story, too, we should come back to. But you need to set up something that makes them afraid to join the Republican Party or to lend their resources and votes in that direction, whether that's manpower, money, or, like I said, showing up and voting in a block. And nothing will do that faster than digging into old tropes that the right has, ties or apologia to the Nazis.
This is
and so I
insane.
don't think
This
that
is
was. I
legitimately
personally,
insane.
like I said, I don't have evidence, and I'm not claiming or making an accusation, but I don't of any specific individual. But I don't think that was organic, and I think it would be naive to believe that it was just an organic shift, even though there's a non-conspiratorial explanation, which is that the woke right, let's say that there's no money, no influence ops whatsoever involved, is making literally the identical mistake that Adolf Hitler made, that he records for himself in the first chapters of Mein Kampf, which I have bothered to read more than once. I don't speak German, so I didn't read it in German, but I have read it, and he's very clear.
I've been thinking about doing a Mein Kampf listening party on my Rumble show. It might be a little bit of a commitment. I did read Mein Kampf a while ago. I can't find my printed copy, and now it's apparently impossible to buy it anymore. But I read it in a different time when I had a different perspective. I've been thinking about maybe doing a listening party, just to make sure that we're up to date on, because listen, again, Hitler was obviously the worst person that ever lived, and Mein Kampf is obviously a terrible book, and we should absolutely not take any of that seriously. And I'm not saying that we should support. We don't support that in any way. Hitler was the worst person in the world. The Holocaust was the worst thing to ever happen. Not less than 6,000,001 Jews exactly died in the Holocaust. I'm just saying that as a matter of a historical text, because this is a topic of conversation nowadays, and we believe in understanding things in their full perspective. And so I'm just saying we should come at this from a more educated place, and I want to explore that book again, but not on YouTube, on Rumble. So go subscribe to my channel on Rumble, rumble.com/Carlin.
that he's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He can't stand the Marxists. You argue with them,
was
they
fighting
lie.
with
The
the
Marxist
Marxists.
press prints nothing but lies, and the rest of the media goes along.
Hey, at least James is admitting that Hitler was fighting the Marxists. Hang on.
I don't speak German, so I didn't read it in German, but I have read it, and he's very clear that he's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He can't stand the Marxists. You argue with them, they lie. The Marxists.
Hang on, I have to get a clip of this. I have to get a clip of this. Hang on. I have to get a clip of this. I'm going to take James out of context so badly. Watch this. I'll be like, breaking news. James Lindsay admits that Hitler was fighting Marxists.
Let's say that there's no money, no influence ops whatsoever involved, is making literally the identical mistake that Adolf Hitler made, that he records for himself in the first chapters of Mein Kampf, which I have bothered to read more than once. I don't speak German, so I didn't read it in German, but I have read it, and he's very clear that he's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He's fighting with the Marxists. He can't stand the Marxists. You argue with them, they lie. The Marxist press prints nothing but lies, and the rest of the media goes along. He yells at them till his voice goes hoarse, drinks his bottle of milk, and comes back and yells at them some more. He's got all these rants about the Marxists. And then he says that one day he finally realized something interesting about them. All the Marxists, all the Social Democrats, which is what the Bolsheviks called their party, was a Social Democrat Party, all of them were Jewish. And he says, suddenly I figured out who was really leading Germany astray. And he says, I was happy to realize because the Jew is not a German.
Hang on.
Now he has.
We're not going to put that last part in. We are going to clip James out of context so fucking badly. Watch this. I never do this, but this is just too funny. We have to do it. We have to do it. We're obligated based on rules of the internet to do this because it's just too fucking funny, okay? It's too funny. We are going to use this clip against James for all time. This is going to be like when we clipped Deb Filman out of context when she said, what did she say? She was saying that she was a terrible mother. Do you guys remember that when Deb said over and over again on her stream that she was a terrible mother, and then we clipped her out of context and made it repeat over and over again? Hang on, give me 1 sec to do this. I have to do this. I have to. I'm obligated by the internet to do this. Hang on. This is just real. This is real. Hang on, I have to edit this real quick, guys. But yeah, she was an overbearing parent. That's right. Hang on 1 sec, guys. One sec, guys. Hang on. Hang on. One sec. Almost there. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, this clip is so fucking beautiful. You guys are going to love this. Oh. Oh, this clip is so beautiful. Oh. What? Hang on 1 sec. I'm just one more. Hang on. Oh, you guys are going to love this. Okay, hang on. James on Hitler. I need to export it real quick, and I'm going to put it on Twitter, and then we will watch it on Twitter, okay? And then I want to show you guys this clip. This clip is fucking awesome. You guys are going to love this. And I need everyone to retweet this clip, and I need all Groypers to share this clip, because this is the best thing that's ever fucking happened. This is the best thing that has ever happened. Hang on. I'm gonna craft a tweet about this. We all need to do this together as a team. This is James. Thank you. Thank you. This is just like the gift that's going to give forever. Breaking news. James Lindsay confirms that Hitler was fighting the Marxists. Were fighting Marxists. Was fighting the Marxists in Germany. And that all the Marxists he was fighting were Jewish. Okay, can someone tell me? I want to do a quick copy edit, okay? I want, if someone can come up with something funnier than this, then please let me know. Like, please, like, come up. I should put his Twitter handle in as well. Hang on, you guys don't need to see what's on my desktop. You guys don't need to see that. Hang on. You guys don't need to see what's on my desktop, okay? Because not that there's anything funny on there's not like porn or anything. Just, it's just messy. All right, it's just messy. Okay. If anyone has a better way to put this. Conceptual James. Breaking news in bold. James Lindsay, in an interview with Rabbi Barclay, confirms that Hitler was fighting the Marxists in Germany and that all the Marxists he was fighting were Jewish. Does anyone have a better edit of this? Looks good? Okay. Now, I'm going to bring this up in my other browser because, first off, I need to put it in another browser for you guys to hear the sound. But let me just put the link to this tweet in the chat. Everyone please retweet this. Tag James in it. James is going to be so fucking pissed. This is all in good fun. This is just for fun. Okay, let me show you guys what the clip looks like. This is just... James is going to be so upset.
And once, not the Adolf Hitler made, that he records for himself in the first chapters of Mein Kampf, which I have bothered to read more than once. Not in the, I don't speak German, so I didn't read it in German, but I have read it.
Oh, shit.
And he's very clear that he's fighting.
Actually, maybe I should do that. Hang on. We're editing on the fly. We're editing the tweet. We are editing the tweet. This is more funny. The more funny. Oh shit, it's already got 7 retweets. Fuck. No, let's go with that. I wish I had seen this before Rationalist because that's definitely more funny. Okay, sorry. Hang on. Let's play the clip again. Watch.
That Adolf Hitler made, that he records for himself in the first chapters of Mein Kampf, which I have bothered to read more than once. Not in the, I don't speak German, so I didn't read it in German, but I have read it, and he's very clear that he's fighting with the Marxists. He can't stand the Marxists. You argue with them, they lie. The Marxist press prints nothing but lies, and the rest of the media goes along. He yells at them till his voice goes hoarse, drinks his bottle of milk, and comes back and yells at them some more. He's got all these rants about the Marxists. And then he says that one day he finally realized something interesting about them. All the Marxists, all the Social Democrats, which is what the Bolsheviks called their party, was the Social Democrat Party, all of them were Jewish. That Adolf Hitler made, that he records for himself.
That's the clip. Is that not fucking gold? Did we just stumble upon the most glorious thing that's ever happened in the history of James Lindsay and the internet? We are going to be able to have that clip forever. We are going to be able to bookmark that clip. We are going to be able to post that clip under everything that James Lindsay tweets about the woke right. Literally every single time that James tweets about the woke right, someone has got to paste that fucking clip in the replies. We found the Easter egg. Maybe I'm having too much fun with this. Maybe I'm too amused by this, but I think it's funny. I mean, James is literally just describing what's actually in the book. Okay, let's go back. Yeah. You guys can quote tweet and say, James Lindsay comes out as Nazi apologist. The woke right has gone off the... James is gonna be so pissed. Be like, James, if you hadn't set it up for us so well, we wouldn't have been able to make the clip in the first place. So really, this is your fault.
He says, I was happy to realize because the Jew is not a German. And so now he has this race-based and religion-based solution to his problem of the Marxists. Oh, they're all Jews. And I've seen this error committed by people now for years on what would have been the proto-woke right and now the woke right, where they say, well, surely you've noticed all of the members of the Frankfurt School had Jewish parentage. Surely you noticed that Marx had Jewish parentage. So it's obviously Jewish in its orientation. Never mind that Marx was raised Lutheran, baptized as a Lutheran, and committed himself to Satan in his late teen years openly and explicitly. Never mind any of that. It's actually supposed to be a Jewish plot, the whole of communism. And this was the error. I mean, there are other reasons that Hitler would have made that error other than just noticing things. He was committed to an occult philosophy that had spiritual
Hitler
root races at its bottom that did not look kindly upon the Semitic peoples, which, by the way, in that definition, Christians were also Semitic peoples. So good luck with that whole mess if you get to the bottom of it. And he also came from a long history of, speaking of Luther, German anti-Semitism and folk nationalism that was suspicious of the Jews. So it's a more complicated situation than we have in the United States. But it's the same error that Marxism and communism are, in fact, just expressions of the true Talmudic Jewish belief, and which I hear all the time. I hear this on the internet.
And by the way, all those
time.
quotes from Talmud, where you see people, are entire mistranslations. There is no. I don't get angry that easily. It's just I bury too many people too. Honestly, James, I marry and bury people. And I got teenagers. There's just not that many things I get angry about. When Candace Owens went on Piers Morgan last week and actually said that the Rebbe, the head of Chabad for the last half of the 20th century, was a Jewish white supremacist, when this is a man who was totally dedicated to every human being and one of the holiest souls who have lived in the last century. Even Bobby Kennedy talked about how his father went to him for advice. Just really angered me to look at this woke right. So if I'm understanding you right, either A, the woke right...
By the way, I just want to point out that we're like halfway through this video. The first 15 minutes of this video were spent talking about cultural Marxism. The last half hour of this video have been spent talking about the woke right.
Which we're calling the Owens, Shields, Fuentes et al. Are ignorant anti-Semitic idiots, on the one hand, who are making mistakes that have been made in history before, and they're just trying to coalesce their ignorance about Judaism and Jews and combining it with their fear and their hatred to try and motivate people, and so they're just actually nincompoops. Or that there is a concerted plan of, since October 7, a very quickly plan that has gone through the Christ is King modality as opposed to Christ is Lord, because there is a difference. As opposed to that whole process, which is really in many ways culminated with both the comments of Candace Owens, but also now Tucker Carlson having that fake historian that he's saying is the greatest historian in the world. And why can't we just explore these things? That this is all, the Candace Tucker, that world is all actually choreographed. You're saying that's your opinion.
So my opinion is some of both. Right. So it's, to quote the Madam Vice President, there's a Venn diagram here and there's an overlapping part, but there are also, I think there are influence operators who are leading this partly to block Jews from finding a home as they become disaffected from the Democratic Party, and also to create a radical splinter that is what they would call in the political warfare literature nullified. So they're trying to create a conservative movement that's increasingly irrelevant to the average American and looked
Yes.
upon with disgust
Please.
because they've adopted.
Can we? I think this sounds like a great goal. Can we please make the conservative movement as it currently stands, the establishment conservative movement, irrelevant to the average American? Can we please make it something that every American looks upon with disgust? Because it's the conservative right that's controlled opposition. I hope everyone realizes this. It's Conservative Inc. and the Daily Wire and the Blaze and James Lindsay and fucking all of these people that are with Turning Point USA. That is the controlled opposition. Moms for Liberty is controlled opposition. Turning Point USA is controlled opposition. The Daily Wire is controlled opposition. The Blaze is controlled opposition. So they should be looked upon with disgust, because they are the reason that the left is winning. There is no possibility of defeating the left as long as the conservative right remains the only opposing force, because it's not even a real opposing force. Yo, I know. It's true.
Horrific.
That's what that Moms for Liberty and Turning Point Cash will do.
I think that this is a radical splinter movement. So there are people who are organizing to do this. And then there are lots of useful idiots or nincompoops who follow along. This is, I think, how almost every single influence operation works, is that there are a relatively small number of people that are actors that are driving it. And then there are a very large number of people who are susceptible to it, who can be led into the trap. And like I said, I can bear no evidence on any individual whatsoever. I've had long conversations in particular about Tucker Carlson, because the biggest mystery in the world right now seems to be in conservative politics is what's going on with Tucker Carlson. Speaking of just noticing things, people are noticing that he laughs maniacally. People are noticing that he's broken very heavily from who he seemed to be 2 years ago.
They're accusing Tucker Carlson of cackling because they don't like that he interviewed someone they disagree with.
Or 3 years ago. And I've talked at length and in depth with people who suspect that he's having an organic break, trying to deal with the stress of the situation, the fact that he was cast out of his job, and he's searching for answers and is angry and is broken. But who knows?
People understand that Tucker Carlson is an extremely wealthy person, right? People understand that Tucker Carlson is an extremely influential person that can get tens of millions of views on whatever he does without trying. Tucker Carlson right now is doing a tour around the country where he is filling arenas of people that are just coming to see him talk about whatever he wants. Tucker Carlson can pick up his phone and call any influencer and get them to come to his events, even if they're Zionists and don't agree with him. He just did an event with Glenn Beck the other day. And James Lindsay's position is that Tucker Carlson is having a psychological break based on the fact that he was forced out of his job at Fox News, which, by the way, was actually probably a pretty good thing for Tucker Carlson, because it meant he got his entire contract paid out and probably gave him a giant-ass chunk of cash with which he started his own network, is producing his own content, interviewing whoever the fuck he wants, doing whatever the fuck he wants. But James Lindsay's assertion is that Tucker Carlson is having a psychological break due to the stress created based on him getting forced out of his job, and Tucker Carlson just can't handle this and is so depressed about it that he's turned to Holocaust denial. And by the way, this is all because Tucker Carlson interviewed someone that has ideas that they don't like. This is all over one interview. They're taking one interview with someone that they don't like as proof of a psychological meltdown. See, it makes more sense now when you think about it, right? You know, all those people who called me insane over the years, all those people who said I have a personality disorder over something stupid, or because they don't like my tone on the internet, or because I blocked them on Twitter because they were an asshole. Like, they're literally making the argument that Tucker Carlson interviewed this one person, and that is evidence of a psychological break with reality. Bro. Tucker Carlson has the #1 podcast in the world, James. Let's just listen to that again. That was crazy.
Who he seemed to be 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And I've talked at length and in depth with people who suspect that he's having an organic break, trying to deal with the stress of the situation, the fact that he was cast out of his job, and he's searching for answers and is angry and is broken. But who knows? He's certainly wealthy enough not to need to be paid off to do something.
Wow.
So it's unclear to me what his motivations are. I'm honestly, again, I bring no evidence against Candace Owens or Nick Fuentes, but I'm vastly more suspicious of both of them, especially given that Nick Fuentes was was in D.C. near the Capitol, not right there, with a bullhorn saying it's time to go into the Capitol, and is one of, as far as I know, 2 people who never got in trouble for doing that.
And why can't we just explore that that's more than coincidence, right? There's so
Nick Fuentes didn't go into the Capitol, and when Nick Fuentes took his bullhorn and did that, he was far enough away from the doors that it didn't make any difference, and no one around him actually moved and started to storm the Capitol, James. Like, facts fucking matter. Nick Fuentes did not break the law. Just because, and it is so fucking pathetic to me that these guys are constantly going after him for this. And by the way, everyone knows that James is spreading a conservative smear campaign against Nick Fuentes, right? Because, and Nick has presented evidence of this, there's an organization called, Influenceable, that someone paid $100,000 to Influenceable to have conservative influencers spread a smear campaign against Nick Fuentes in which they use the hashtag #FedFuentes, and James is literally lifting talking points from a smear campaign that was funded with $100,000. You're the controlled opposition, James. You are the controlled opposition. It's not fucking Nick Fuentes, who has built, by the way, an organic platform of supporters that dwarf anything these people have. He is the controlled opposition.
One that we bring on, Karis Rea, who I think you're friends with, and I know she wants to add something to the discussion as well. We're very blessed. She also just came back from Vegas at the RJC. Those of us who are rabbis who work in congregations, we're planning Rosh Hashanah right now, James, so we couldn't go. But Karis, you did go, and I know you wanted to talk about this wokeness on the right, these kind of experiences as well. So maybe you can join on in.
I cannot believe how much this is about.
Absolutely.
The woke right.
Can you
This
guys
is
hear me?
crazy.
We can.
This
There you
is
are.
insane.
Awesome. Good to see
I'm
you
so glad
all.
we
Good to
watched
see you,
this.
James. And I just wanted to say thank you, James, for sticking up for my people, for the Jews, against somebody like Tucker Carlson. I have talked to so many public figures who agree with what
I'm not sure I can show you guys the thing that Mizakan just posted on Twitter. I'm not sure I can show you this, but I want to try to show you this. I'm not Oh my God. I disavow this. I didn't make this. I didn't make this. Mizakan made it. I didn't make this. I'm just putting the link to it in the chat. I did not make this. There's so much depth to this. There's so much going on here. Where do we even begin? I mean, look, what I really appreciate is that right under James' crotch, right next to Emmy O'Brien and Judith Butler, we have the #1 goal of queer Marxism is abolishing social reproduction of capitalism within the nuclear family. That's actually completely correct. So that's a really good piece of education that I think is important. We've got up here, we've got Drag Queen Story Hour. It's about teaching kids that gender is performative and fluid and that one can change their gender like changing an outfit. Yeah, that's right. When kids eventually learn about the gender spectrum and doubt their own identities, maybe they'll remember how fun and glitzy it was to be gender nonconforming, and perhaps they'll switch to non-binary. I think it's a really good way to put it. Queer Marxism is about abolishing the gender binary and the nuclear family by ways of destabilizing the normative values that define both heteronormativity and homonormativity, both of which uphold the nuclear family. I mean, that's pretty dead on. Non-binary identities set the stage for alternative modes of kinship and chosen families, which are anti-capitalist in nature. I think this is just like I think this is a really excellent educational tool that Mizakan has created for us very creatively. I mean, there's just so much good information on this. I really think that probably, I mean, these are really important things that everyone needs to know. And I think that maybe people should just make sure they're sharing this information with as many people as possible, because I just think that all these things are really important for like average normies to understand about the situation. And, you know, I really just want to, I mean, creative might be an understatement. You're right about that. Creative might be an understatement. You know what? You're right. He even gave James socialist tattoos. I think Mizakan, that was just an excellent. That was inspiration on your part to make sure that James has socialist tattoos. Socialist tattoos are a very specific type of tattoo that socialists get. It's called ignorant tattoo style. It's to identify them as queer. I mean, you know, you gotta have all of James's favorite people on there, don't you? It's just okay, excellent work. Excellent work. Good job. All right. Good job. Yeah, I think someone's probably gonna have a problem with that. Yep. Yeah, I didn't create it though. I didn't do it. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do it.
We are saying now about Tucker Carlson, but they are too scared to call him out publicly because they either are writing a book and want to get on his show, or because of the backlash. I mean, just look at the trolls. Look at the trolls that you're getting, James, when you say something. These Candace and Tucker trolls are absolutely vicious. And so I think it's really important that we have non-Jewish conservative voices that are able to do the right thing in this case. So I just want to rewind a little bit because we're throwing around this term, the woke right. And Rabbi, I feel like some of your audience who's likely conservative may never have heard.
Not to like docs on Twitter or anything, but Nick Fuentes definitely liked the breaking news. James Lindsay reports that Hitler was fighting the Marxists. I win the internet today. W me. I found the L James. Oh my god, that's so funny. That is so funny. I told you guys it is the greatest clip of all time. There will never be a clip that is better. All right. We still have 40 minutes left of this. How many more clips are we going to get?
And we're just kind of assuming that everybody knows what it means. You know, I've been thinking about this for months. I actually thought I coined that term, right? And then Konstantin Kisin wrote about it. And then I talked to Catherine Brodsky and she had written about it. I'm like, you guys all stole my napkin. But many people have been noticing this. And what is it? It's not a distinct movement, right? Just like the woke left can consist of, you know, a lot of different factions. The woke right overlaps with includes some paleo conservatives and libertarians, Pat Buchanan revivalists like Dave Smith, and Groypers like Nick Fuentes and Jake Shields, and Christian nationalists, as well as some health freedom advocates who previously came from the left and are now on the right. Now, why are these people woke? right? If
Yeah,
they
why?
believe in supposedly conservative principles such as America first and you know, freedom of religion and free speech and tradition and family, then how are they woke? Well, a number of
Exactly.
reasons
How are they
that you
woke?
guys were alluding to that I just
How?
want to kind of categorize and parse out. First of all, they're trying to rewrite history, just like the left does, right? Just like the 1619 Project
Oh
or
my God.
tearing
By the
down
way,
statues.
we actually have to pay attention to this. These are the same. Where do we hear these talking points? These are the same talking points. These are the same talking points from Konstantin Kisin. Holy shit. Guys, she's about to give us exactly the same talking points that Konstantin Kisin gave us in that video we watched yesterday where Konstantin Kisin was talking about the woke right. And the reason I bring this up is this is how you know that some organization has sent out a list of talking points to say, here is what you're going to say about the woke right. There's some sort of effort on this, with these particular influencers to say the fucking memo went out. The fucking memo went out. It's almost like they're being paid. It's almost like these people have exactly, let's confirm that she has exactly the same talking points that Konstantin Kisin had yesterday. You can see the narrative building happening right in front of you. This is an organized script.
That I just want to kind of categorize.
Like, why the fuck is James Lindsay going on Rabbi Barclay's show? Rabbi Barclay has 200 subscribers on YouTube. Rabbi Barclay doesn't have an audience. Why the fuck is James Lindsay going on this show? The only reason we're finding this is because Human Centipede sent it to us this morning. Because Human Centipede knows everything. Anyway, let's listen to the, these are the approved conservative talking points for why the woke right is the woke right.
And you know, freedom of religion and free speech and tradition and family, then how are they woke? Well, a number of reasons that you guys were alluding to that I just want to kind of categorize and parse out. First of all, they're trying to rewrite history, just like the left does, right? Just like the 1619 Project or tearing down statues of Gandhi and Lincoln and Churchill, just like the woke left does. This is now what people like Candace and Tucker are trying to do. And again, when you say we're just asking questions, they're not, because they're not doing it in good faith. They're not taking an element of history.
They're asking questions, but they're not asking the right questions, and they're not asking the questions we want them to ask, and they're not asking those questions in good faith. Oh, James is starting to struggle session Benjamin Boyce now? Listen, Benjamin, I have never had anything against you, bro. I've never had anything against you, Benjamin. I think you're awesome. I think your work is awesome. I have never said anything negative about you. I have really backed off from being around you in years because I know that James Lindsay is your friend and you interview him a lot on your channel and all this stuff. And I've really just backed away, and I feel like I'm owed some credit for that because, you know, I feel like you got sold some lies about me, Benjamin, by some people that we both know, and, you know, that's okay. But I never said a bad thing about you. I'm just saying, Benjamin, that if you look at the real world evidence, then James is obviously and clearly lying, and I know you're intellectually honest, Benjamin. And if you ever want to connect, maybe on the down low, offline, in a way that people don't have to know about, to talk about how intellectually dishonest James is being, now that James is literally trying to struggle session you, Benjamin, because he's going to come for you too. I'm sorry your friend went woke. You guys have had a lot of good conversations over the years, Benjamin. You really have. You've had insightful conversations. You have direct experience with this stuff. You know what it looks like, Benjamin. You need to be intellectually honest about what's going on with James, and there are people here that will have your back, bro. That's all I'm saying.
And having a good faith conversation about what was right and what is wrong. They're taking fundamental history that is the establishment of Western civilization and all that is good, that conservatives know is good and hold dear, and they're trying to tear that down. That is why you see them going after Israel and Britain, right? Two countries who are in many ways form the basis of Western civilization, right? Judeo values. And also you see this tendency to have a victimhood complex. That's another characteristic that is very similar to the left, right? It's highly centered around Christians as victims, right? And now, just like on the left, right, they will take something like racism, which is a very, very real thing, right? But they will find it where it doesn't exist. And that is exactly what this woke right camp is doing, right? Christians are a highly persecuted people around the world. Even right here in our backyard, look at the churches being burned and desecrated in Canada. Look at the Middle East, where there's been what has been called a slow genocide of Christians. Look at Nigeria and the horrible torture that Christians are facing on a regular basis. But do you hear this camp talking about those places? No, they're looking for it where it is not, right? They're looking for it in Israel, the one place where the Christian community is increasing, where Christians.
Haven't I seen video of Jews in Israel spitting on Christians? Did I make this up? And listen, I'm not a Christian. I don't really care about any of that, but like, I swear that I've seen video on more than one occasion of Jews in Israel spitting on Christians who were making a pilgrimage. Am I making that up, or have other people seen that video too? Yeah, I think I have. I think other people have seen that video. Yeah, I think I've seen that video. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't like going places where I don't even like getting figuratively spit on by someone insulting me or like demeaning or condescending to me. I feel like that's a figurative form of spitting on someone, but like if I'm actually being spit on, that just seems like that kind of seems like a lot of people in my chat have seen the video of Christians being spit on in Israel.
Flee, from neighboring countries where Christians are among the most successful.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong. I could just be making this up. I'm prone to delusion, as you guys know, but I seem to remember that there was a really old Christian church in Gaza. It was like, what was it? Like, it was like the third oldest Christian church in the world. And I seem to remember that at the very beginning of their bombing campaign in Gaza, where they have now dropped more tons of explosives on Gaza that were dropped on like Hiroshima and like all these other places. Like, I seem to remember that very early on in the bombing of Gaza, that Israel specifically targeted like this really old Christian church in Gaza where people were going for refuge. It's the third oldest Christian church in the world, and they bombed the shit out of that church, even though it was the third oldest Christian church in the world. Yeah, am I making that up? I feel like that was the thing that happened. Yeah, I'm right about that. Man. It's so great that Israel has just such massive respect for Christian artifacts and history that they bombed the fuck out of the third oldest Christian church in the world that was holding a whole bunch of people who had already lost their homes and were just like seeing a place to stay and stuff like that. May have been an Orthodox Christian church, but yet still Christian. A piece of history obliterated. But guys, every Palestinian in the third oldest Christian church that was obliterated by Gaza, every single person in that church was a human shield. The women were human shields. The children were human shields. Everyone that was running the church were human shields. All of the Palestinians in that church, that was the third oldest Christian church in the world that was bombed to the ground by Israel, they were all human shields, and that's why Israel just had to bomb the third oldest Christian church in the world. If not members of Hamas. Yeah, that's a fair point, because really, according to Israel, everyone's a member of Hamas in Gaza, and so fair point.
minorities, outbeating the Jewish population in many regards, in many metrics, right? They're also focusing on things like, World War II and saying that, Candace is saying, oh, it was meant to, it wasn't meant to victimize Jews. It was trying to victimize Christians, right? And
well, Candace
so on and so on. And just a couple more things. Their use of language, which is another feature of the woke right, and identity politics, right? So just like the left throws out labels in order to shut you down, if you criticize these people, just look at their trolls. James has so much experience with this. If you criticize Tucker or Candace or Jake or Jackson Hinkle or Dave Smith or that crazy doctor who came out of nowhere that's ranting about Jews, you are now
over
a
a million
neocon,
subscribers,
right? Immediately, you're a Jewish supremacist or you're a Jew, right? Just like the woke left loves to talk about, whites.
You guys are literally Jewish. She's like, if you criticize people, they will call you a Jew. Both of the people on the screen right now are literally Jewish. One of them is literally a rabbi. Oh, yeah, Dave Smith is also part of the woke right, according to them. Yep. Dave Smith ain't getting off lightly because he's associated with Candace Owens. And even though Dave Smith kind of seems to be backing away quietly from Candace Owens, he's really trying. I don't think they're best friends anymore. But, Dave Smith is part of the woke right as well.
Supremacists and racists and neocons. Now the woke right is doing the same thing, although you'll never hear them talk about Christian supremacists, right? Or it's if you criticize them, oh, you're just trying to get me canceled, right? Again,
they in fact do talk about Christian supremacists. Nick Fuentes wants a Christian country. Nick Fuentes wants Christian men to be in charge of running the country. So he, in fact, does talk about that, actually rather explicitly.
And more victimhood. There's this obsession with, I'm the victim and you're trying to cancel me. And that's a lot of gaslighting. I mean, Tucker says that he goes on Charlie Kirk after the Daryl Cooper interview and he says, criticism is good. I welcome criticism. People can be criticized.
I really want everyone to pay attention to all of the influencers who are spouting these woke right talking points, because every single one of them is part of a concerted campaign to push this bullshit. And it's so transparent and it's so ridiculous and it's so stupid. And anyone that buys into this is just not smart enough to exist on the same plane as us. And I really think we need to just never trust anyone pushing this bullshit again.
Our interview, but what really gets me is the hysteria of it. How out of control people are.
You guys are the ones that are hysterical.
I saw some really honest, good faith criticism. So that's just this gaslighting. And if you look at Tucker and how he uses language, he's reckless in his insults. I mean, he will just take anybody and just start calling them names, right? And so, just to sum, look, I could go on and on. There's so much more of this. And I think, just at its core, in terms, if we want to ask why this is going on, I know there's different theories. James, I know you think it's possible that there's foreign funding involved and, psyops and stuff like that. I do think that's a possibility. Look at what just happened with Lauren Chen. But I think we can't disregard the ideology and the fact that when the right goes so, too far to the right and they get into this neo-isolationist mindset, this
God forbid the conservative right actually go to the right. The conservative right, they're just getting a little too far to the right. They need to pull it back. They need to become a little bit more moderate. That's actually, my God. Do these people even hear themselves?
Or anti-interventionist one-track mind, because I'm not saying that isolationism is bad. It just needs to be applied with a nuance and not as a blanket ideology.
What she means by that, she actually just attacked anti-war people. Did you guys hear that? See this anti-war, anti-intervention. She's literally saying that people who are anti-war and oppose foreign aid are on the woke right. And the reason she's saying, no, I'm not saying that all anti-war people are bad. I'm just saying that people who don't want to fund Israel and don't want to go to war with Iran are bad because, you know, this requires a little bit of nuance. You can be anti-war and anti-interventionist on concerning every other country, but you can't be anti-war when it comes to going to war with Iran for Israel, and you can't be anti-war and anti-interventionist when it comes to funding Israel's bombing of Gaza. We have to have nuance to this, guys. Otherwise, you are on the woke right. I don't know how people don't see this. Nuance means Israel's agenda. Anyone who is America first is woke right. This is crazy. Human Centipede, did you get to this point? Because this is fucking crazy. Again?
And the fact that when the right goes so, too far to the right and they get into this neo-isolationist mindset, this anti-war, anti-interventionist, one-track mind, because I'm not saying that isolationism is bad. It just needs to be applied with a nuance and not as a blanket ideology. But when you disregard other issues, then you have people on the right that are actually teaming up. This is how you know they're woke right. They're teaming up with everybody who does not share their supposedly conservative values, whether it's, Chomsky leftists like Glenn Greenwald or self-declared commies like Jackson Hinkle, right? But because all these people...
She just went after Glenn Greenwald because Glenn Greenwald talked to Nick Fuentes one time. Since Nick teams up with leftists and goes on there, so Nick had he was doing something with Jackson Hinkle before that whole thing fell apart. But that was an attack on Glenn Greenwald because Glenn Greenwald dared to interview Nick Fuentes. This is nuts.
People are anti-neocon. Then you have this new woke right movement who's going to disregard all of their other views and they're going to platform them. That is what you call an agenda. The woke right has an agenda and it is not a conservative agenda. It is anti-conservative.
Hang on. Started around minute 49. Okay. Yo. This is crazy. I'm going to send this to Nick. Maybe Nick should fucking watch this. Nick really should watch this. Hang on. Hang on one sec. You should watch this starting at minute 49. Someone is funding a campaign to push this idea of the woke right. Konstantin Kisin just used the same talking points 2 days ago. Okay, I just sent him that. This is nuts.
So, thank you, Kirsten. And James, did you agree that there is an agenda to the woke right and it is not the same agenda as the conservative movement?
Yeah, I think that was extraordinarily well stated in the kind of categorical list of attributes that make the woke right like the woke left, especially the focus on victimhood and manipulation of language and the kind of demonization of anybody who disagrees with them. Whether it's an appellation like neocon or, I'm accused hourly of taking Jewish money. I don't know when that's coming, but any time I guess would be okay. It hasn't arrived.
It comes from Moms for Liberty and Turning Point USA, James.
Yet. Stands in the face of some jokes about Jews and money that I've heard that I don't know if those bear on reality or not, but I certainly haven't got any. So I get accused.
James, don't feel bad. When I was the last interview that was ever on Candace's show, so I was blamed for it as the head of some sort of Jewish cabal. I want to know where my check is too, so you're not alone.
Yeah, okay, well, you didn't get yours either. That's amazing. I get accused of not just being I mean, just outright that I'm a Jew all the time. Shabbos Goy, I hear on the hourly. I get attacked by this a lot. So these are very clear attributes of woke behavior. It's exactly like the woke. They're actually very nasty, very angry, very tapped into resentment, very tapped into a resentment-based entitlement as well. But I just want to put some interest on the word woke. Woke means woke up, right? It refers to having awakened to a secret knowledge of reality.
Oh
I
my
have made the case
God.
many times, and I'll
No,
make the
that's
case
not what it
again that I
means.
believe it is a
Wait,
reinvention of
wait.
the ancient Gnostic heresies that they
Yes!
believe that they've seen through.
Ding, 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 ding! Who said James was going to say Gnostic in this interview? Who said? I think pretty much everyone said it. There was only one detractor who thought James wasn't going to say Gnostic in the interview. There it is. There it is. He said it. Ding, ding, ding. Bingo. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. If you voted for James saying Gnostic in this interview, then you got that right. Yup, that's okay. You need to sit in your wrongness and be wrong and learn a lesson about it. Yeah, he just said woke is Gnostic. Yeah, he did. Yup, he did. Yup. Yup. Here we go. Let's just listen to that again. The definition of woke is that you have hidden knowledge. You have hidden fucking Gnostic knowledge.
As well. But I just want to put some interest on the word woke. Woke means woke up, right? It refers to having awakened to a secret knowledge of reality. I have made the case many times, and I'll make the case again, that I believe it is a reinvention of the ancient Gnostic heresies that they believe that they've seen through the truth of the oppression that's presented maybe in the ancient religions, whether it's looking at Genesis and saying that God is actually a demon that is it's called the demiurge that's created the world to imprison people to keep them from their true nature as gods themselves.
It's a demiurge? A demiurge. A demiurge. I need to listen to this again. I'm sorry.
Of the ancient Gnostic heresies that they believe that they've seen through the truth of the oppression that's presented maybe in the ancient religions, whether it's looking at Genesis and saying that God is actually a demon that is it's called the demiurge that's created the world to imprison people to keep them from their true nature as gods themselves, and thus had to cast them out of the garden, whether they're looking at that in the first century Christian cults that took on a number of characteristics based off of this belief that they had the secret gospel of Thomas and so on, that allegedly Jesus gave this totally different perspective. I think that these Gnostic cults have been reimagined. So what unifies the woke left and woke right, aside from these parallel attributes, is in both cases they follow the Gnostic path, which is that they've woken up to a system of oppression that's against people like them, which generates that victim mentality, which generates the superiority through inferiority complex that we see in both cases, that they're only held inferior because of an illegitimate power that's keeping them down. Well, in this case, one of those illegitimate powers they believe seems to be Jewish power that's controlling the world and keeping them down. So
Oy vey. Guys, if you believe that Israel has a disproportionate impact and influence on American politics, then you are a secret Gnostic cultist. Everyone's hearing this, right? Remember, a year ago, we James was saying that that queer theory was a secret Gnostic cult, and now James is saying that if you are concerned about the disproportional amount of influence that Israel has on American politics, which has literally been talked about by the likes of Thomas Massey, like, this is not made up. He said that every sitting congressman had an AIPAC representative on speed dial. Like, this is not made up. We are sending billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to Israel for them to bomb the shit out of Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu came and spoke in front of Congress and basically said, America, you want to go to war with Iran, right? Because we really need to go to war with Iran. You guys want to go to war with Iran? Like, we want you to go to, we as Israel aren't going to go to war with Iran, but you guys can go to war with Iran, right? You guys want to go to war with Iran? And James Lindsay is saying that anyone who is looking factually at what is happening in the world and saying, you know, this is a little weird. Maybe we shouldn't be sending Israel billions of dollars to fight a war that doesn't fucking involve us. James is saying that you are a literal Gnostic if you take that position. And they've already said earlier in this presentation that you are on the woke right if you are anti-war and anti-interventionist when it comes to Israel. You can be anti-war and anti-interventionist with every other country in the world except for Israel. If you are anti-war and anti-interventionist when it comes to Israel, you are on the woke right. This is not, I cannot believe this. This is so embarrassing for James. I need to listen to this again. I cannot even fucking believe what we're hearing right now.
As well, but I just want to put some interest on the word woke. Woke means woke up, right? It refers to having awakened to a secret knowledge of reality. I have made the case many times, and I'll make the case again, that I believe it is a reinvention of the ancient Gnostic heresies, that they believe that they've seen through the truth of the oppression that's presented maybe in the ancient religions, whether it's, you know, looking at Genesis and saying that God is actually a demon that is you know, it's called the demiurge, that's created the world to imprison people, to keep them from their true nature as gods themselves, and thus had to cast them out of the garden. Whether they're looking at that in the first century Christian cults that took on a number of characteristics based off of this belief, that they had the secret gospels, gospel of Thomas and so on, that, you know, allegedly Jesus gave this totally different perspective. I think that these Gnostic cults have been reimagined. So what unifies the woke left and woke right, aside from these parallel attributes, is in both cases, they follow the Gnostic path, which is that they've woken up to a system of oppression that's against people like them, which generates that victim mentality, which generates the superiority through inferiority complex that we see in both cases, that they're only held inferior because of an illegitimate power that's keeping them down. Well, in this case, one of those illegitimate powers they believe seems to be Jewish power that's controlling the world and keeping them down. So Jews occupy this illegitimate position as almost demiurges that are controlling society. Or maybe it's not just that. Maybe it's the communists more broadly. Maybe it's the neocons, who, by the way...
Well, I mean, hey, at least James admits again that maybe it's the Jews, maybe it's the communists. Who knows? Maybe it's both. Who's really to say?
Are just Trotskyites in business suits who have taken over our government. Maybe it's the neo-libs or whoever it happens to be, the parasitical deep state or counter state that runs our government. These are entities holding us down, and they hold us down in particular because of some, you know, evil agenda to prevent us from having liberation from our oppression. That is the fundamental Gnostic belief system.
Wow, James.
And it's present on the woke left, which sees systemic racism, systemic homophobia, and so on as controlling powers, systemic classism being for classical Marxism, being controlling factors of all of life, the capitalist.
Oh, hang on. Is he about to actually say fucking capitalism?
Being for classical Marxism, being controlling factors of all of life, the capitalist ideology and the capitalist culture being that.
Again, there's James admitting the fucking truth that he knew all along, that we said he knew, and I said he was lying to people, and people didn't believe me.
Force, the hegemonic force in the cultural Marxist, and you see it on the woke right, that they have woken up to the true masters of the universe, who everybody's obviously afraid to name. They won't just say it, and only they know the secret, and that secret is a secret knowledge that can offer a path to liberation from their oppression and their plight, which they then express as victimhood every time they're challenged. And I think it's the same impulse. I think it's the same psychological architecture underneath, and I think it's the same spiritual disease in both cases. So I think calling them woke left and woke right and having woken up to a
This is
Gnostic lie
fucking
is,
embarrassing.
in fact, completely appropriate. But Karis gave, I think, a much more practical and graspable and prosaic explanation that people can resonate with what it looks like when it manifests.
So simply put, before we leave this topic, and because I do want to get to one other thing, certainly, or at least one other thing.
Yeah.
Either
Yeah, James just basically said that Nick Fuentes is a leader of a Gnostic sex cult. Maybe not sex cult, because obviously Nick Fuentes is a virgin. But like, he definitely said that Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens and Jake Shields and Tucker Carlson are leaders of some sort of Gnostic cult. He absolutely said that. I cannot even.
there, if I'm understanding you correctly, either there is this whole woke right, and it is a manifestation of an acceptance of a Gnostic philosophy. It is, you actually made reference recently, you're talking about trying to pull in an indigenous cultural thought.
A manifestation of a Gnostic philosophy.
Think you talked about. But it's looking back at something that's ancient and saying, oh, look, we have that special knowledge, and that is why they're behaving the way they are. And or a combination of the idea that many of these leaders or people that are in the forefront are actually, it's part of a plan. That's why Christ is King came out on.
This is the question. Does James even believe what he's saying anymore? I don't know the answer to this. I really don't know the answer to this. James kind of looks dead inside to me, if I'm really honest about it. He looks dead inside. James looks like a man who has sold his soul for fucking money. That's what James looks like to me. Someone who is dead inside, who has no life, who has sold his soul for money. So does he believe it? I don't know. Does he know he's lying? Maybe. But it's just like, at this point, like, he can never walk this back. Yeah, only James has the hidden secret knowledge of what's actually going on in the world, and that everyone who disagrees with James is in a Gnostic cult. And now James has to live in a lie of his own making, which is probably the best punishment that James could get. He couldn't just stick to the truth. He couldn't just stick to the evidence. He has painted himself into a corner. He cannot back out of this corner in any sort of easy way. Yo. James became an NPC. He did. He did. He became an NPC. Wow. I mean, he even looks like one, doesn't he? Like, he kind of looks like an NPC.
On October 8th by Candace. That's why Tucker's doing what he's doing, etc. So there's the two ways, or the two causes and manifestations of the woke right, and it could be one and or both. Is that the simple definition of who they are and what it is and what's causing it?
Yeah, I think so. Delusion and deception are kind of usually two sides of the same coin. And it's, without really great evidence, it's very difficult to pull them apart and determine who's on which side of what. But yeah, I think
that's a great quote. Delusion, I don't know if that's yours. If it is, I owe you a quarter, because it's brilliant. Delusion and deception are two sides of the same coin. And that is absolutely brilliant. So let's move to a different delusion and deception for a minute.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got?
And I'm going to preface it by telling you a story.
Oh,
and
good.
It's something that happened to me not too long ago. There was a young woman, we're going to call her Deborah. She was training for her bat mitzvah, so she was 12 years old. And I get a phone call from her parents. Rabbi, come over. Deborah wants to be called David, and she wants a bar mitzvah.
Uh-oh.
So I come over, and this is what had happened. This young woman she was a tomboy. She was uncomfortable getting her first menstrual cycle. She went to her counselor, who said, well, maybe that's because you're actually a boy. Let's call you David in class for the next 2 weeks, or next 2 months, excuse me. And if you feel comfortable as David, we will tell your parents that you're actually David. So that's what she did. She felt more comfortable, told her parents. Parents talked to the counselor, how dare you do this? The counselor's response, and understand, in California, these counselors have no psychological training. They do not have degrees in psychology, therapy, or anything else. They have a 6-hour class. That's it, on how to counsel teenagers. And this quote-unquote counselor tells the parents, either you have a choice. Either you can have a dead daughter or a live son. Which do you want?
Yeah, they do
so
that. That sucks.
they do what has been done for centuries. They called the rabbi like somehow I'm.
Do you guys want to look at this? Look at this. This is the fucking problem. You don't seem to realize America is threatened by a communist revolution advanced by Democrats. Kim Iverson, who is awesome, by the way. She doesn't understand government schooling yet, but we're working on that. We're working very diligently. I have full faith that once Kim Iverson realizes that the public schools are not run by Asian mothers, that she will come around to the idea that all government schooling is bad, all right? But Kim Iverson correctly tweeted yesterday, I'm not voting for Trump or Kamala because I'm not going to vote for people who supported genocide. And she said she's going to vote for Jill Stein. She also said Chase Oliver was a great candidate, and just kind of put it out there that this is what I'm doing and like whatever. And now James, who claims that he's not woke, is trying to struggle session Kim Iverson into voting for Trump because the Democrats are literally communists. Luckily, Kim Iverson has had me on her show, and so she knows that the real communists and socialists were protesting the DNC, which means the Democrats aren't communists, because if the real communists and socialists were protesting the DNC, then that means that the Democrats inside the DNC are not actually communists. Yeah, Kim Iverson is very smart. You know, everyone needs to come around on government schooling. It can take a while sometimes. Unfucking believable. I cannot even believe that we're watching this right now. I think we might have gotten through all the good parts, but
I'm going to fix this.
Let's just see where this goes.
Okay. And I sat down with the young person. We talked about the changes going on, not only in her body, but in the neuroplasticity of her brain. How her brain isn't fully developed till she's 27, 28. And then in talking with her, we spent 3 hours and talking. I explained to her something, that there's your gender, there's your sex, there is your energy. And these are 3 different things that have been combined together in Western culture that really aren't meant to be combined. Your gender is your XY chromosomes. I don't care what you do, you can't change it.
Energy is Gnostic.
End of story. That's
see if James
what you
calls
are.
That out.
Your sexuality, you might be gay, straight, bi, whatever. And your energy is yin or yang, feminine or masculine, being that one is going outwards, one is coming inwards. And we all have male and female.
Is the rest of this worth listening to, Human Centipede, or did we just get through all the good stuff? Because we've been going for almost 4 hours now, and I feel like I'm so discombobulated by how crazy the entire middle section of this interview was that I have no energy to give to debunking James on queer theory. I really am. I'm completely I am verklempt over how crazy that was. So I don't know. Let me know if there's any more good stuff, and we'll watch if there is. But no. Oh, actually, okay. Democrats aren't commie directly, but they're kind of toothless to push back on. Kamala Harris told the communist activist to fuck off. When the communist activist came to Kamala Harris's rally, Kamala stopped the rally and told them to fuck off. Kamala Harris didn't integrate any of them into the DNC. They aren't any part of the platform so far as I can tell. So, no, I wouldn't say they are influenced, because if they were influenced, then Kamala Harris wouldn't have told them to fuck off when they came to her rally. That's conservative propaganda, bro. That's not real. Oh, you're an Aussie? All right. Well, we can forgive you for not knowing them because you're on the other side of the world. And all right, forgiven.
Male energy, and we all utilize it at different times. And that we don't want to convolute the three. We don't want to combine them. And that just because her energy is masculine and because her sexuality, she hasn't even figured out what that is. She was 12 years old. That doesn't mean her gender is different than what she was born. And I've even gone so far to write about the fact that for a man to say he's a woman because he feels that way is in some way it's idol worship, that he knows better than God. The good news out of this is that she agreed that till she was 28, she would do no hormones, do no surgery. I consider it a big win. So it's a good story in that way. I know this is a passionate topic with you in terms of you understand how this is, when you talked about the idea of family, religion, law, media, that this goes into those family relationships and the idea of making the state having a deeper relationship than with the young person than the parents, even more so than not being able to help them with their math homework. Your thoughts about this whole transgender?
Yeah. I think that this is the greatest child abuse medical scandal probably in history. I don't think that's had anything like a parallel as far as medical scandals go of similar awfulness since lobotomies, which were not targeted at children who are often suffering trauma, or young women who are suffering the naturally somewhat traumatic experience of their puberty beginning, their periods beginning in particular. Menarche is not exactly a comfortable experience. Their bodies start to develop. They start to get unwanted glances they're not used to, that don't match the rest of their experience as children. There's a lot of trauma and difficulty there. And we're not even talking about kids necessarily who've been sexually abused or otherwise abused or neglected, or who have, as you see at the Tavistock Clinic, which was the largest gender clinic in the UK until it got shut down, the very high rates of autism in these the children that are going in these directions. 35% had moderate to severe autism at the Tavistock Clinic, and that doesn't even count mild to moderate. So you have a very serious conflation with these other issues. There's a high comorbidity with personality disorders as they develop, like borderline personality disorder. And so there are a lot of reasons to believe that these are extraordinarily vulnerable young people who are being pulled into a particularly dark lie that I think you articulated very well, that they are somehow born in the wrong body. And I actually believe, like you said, that not only is this, I think, accurately described as a form of idol worship, that they somehow know better than God. I actually think that this is unabashedly a spiritual belief that must be understood as a spiritual belief and not a healthy one. It is a spiritual disease that's taking advantage of other issues and illnesses in these particularly vulnerable young people. And we can have all the compassion in the world for that, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't deal with it in the most responsible manner possible, which is not to lie to children and to say that they can transform who they are when, in fact, they cannot do so. So this is, I've written a book about this issue called The Queering of the American Child, to where I don't talk about the main driver of the problem, which is overwhelmingly social media. Every single detransitioner, that's somebody who transitioned and has desisted or gone back to their sex and lives their lives as who they are more authentically. Every single one that I've talked to said that they were led to this online, and then that the schools helped confirm it for them and often helped hide it from their parents and often helped them find medical treatment, although sometimes the medical comes before the school. The school, for example, with Chloe Cole was the last entity to be on board with it. It went from online to medical facilities, these clinics and these counselors,
Okay,
like
I
you're
don't want to
mentioning,
listen to this anymore.
very little.
I think this is getting into like just typical stuff now, and just like I feel like we've gotten through the most wild part of this whole thing, which is like the woke right stuff. Can everyone please do me a favor? Please be on the lookout for any influencers or videos talking about the so-called woke right, because I am absolutely convinced that this is a campaign. This is something that has been crafted. There are approved talking points for this. Konstantin Kisin used exactly the same talking points as we saw in this video 2 days ago. I want to know who else is using these talking points. Is Dave Rubin using these talking points? Is Jordan Peterson using these talking points? Is Ben Shapiro using these talking points? Who else is? This is a 100% manufactured campaign that someone is putting money into. And I want to know who it is. Because this shit is crazy. You read an article referencing it today. If you guys, my DMs are open on Twitter. You can always send me stuff. Even if like I don't follow, you can still send me stuff. Yeah, this is scripted. It's incredibly shady. And again, and I know that maybe there might be people watching this that haven't come to the conclusion that a lot of us came to a while. Yeah, this might be the ADL. Yup. APAC. Yup. I would not be surprised if APAC and or the ADL were funding this. I really wouldn't be. Again, why the fuck is James Lindsay on this guy's show? Rabbi Barclay has 200 subscribers on YouTube. Why the fuck is James Lindsay on this guy's show? James Lindsay's not an expert in the woke right. Why was the majority of this show, including 2 special guests that just popped up out of nowhere, why was this all about the woke right? There's something going on, and it's very obvious, and I think that we should be paying attention to this, because there is a woke right in this scenario, and it's not Nick Fuentes, and it's not Jake Shields, and it's not Candace Owens, and it's not Tucker Carlson. Candace Owens might be a narcissist, but that's like a separate problem. Unbelievable. Listen, if you are a James fan, I am genuinely sorry. I'm genuinely sorry if you're having your epiphany today that he is a liar and a shill and has been taking money to sell these talking points for a long-ass time. I really, really am. But I don't know how you can watch what we watched today and be tuned into any sense of reality at all and not see exactly what is going on. This is manufactured. This is not real. And James is one of the people out there selling this. And that means you can never trust a word that comes out of that guy's mouth again. I'm sorry. I know a lot of you learned a lot from him, and there's still value in what he used to teach, but that, like, not anymore. Not going forward. You guys have got to stop fucking listening to him, because he is only going to confuse you. We need to keep track of the term woke right on all the platforms in the coming days. Yeah, like I'm going to set like notifications on my sock account for this where I'm not blocked by anyone. I want to know how many other influencers are using this fucking term and how many of them are using the same talking points. I bet woke right is more projection or psychological. So no. Well, it's projection from James. This is a concerted campaign, bro. Go back and watch the whole video. This comment doesn't even make sense. Didn't James get invited to a big Jewish meeting recently? I don't know. I wasn't paying that close attention. Wow. I'm really glad we took the time to watch that. I'm really glad we took a day off of queer Marxism and we took some time to tune into current events. Anyway, Guys, that's all I have for today. As a reminder, if you want to support the work I'm doing, please head over to my Substack. That is Carlin, KARLYN.substack.com. Since James Lindsay has completely abdicated his responsibility in educating people about what the left is doing, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think I have the most comprehensive resource on the internet to actually educate people about what the left is doing in the real world. I use everything based on primary source evidence. There's no pinky swear, trust me, bro. There's only videos and texts that come from primary sources. I read them, I analyze them, I watch them, I clip them, I show you what's going on. There's a new podcast up, which is the Actively Unwoke podcast. You can subscribe to the Actively Unwoke podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That is the free podcast of my Substack. You can also check out the Inner Circle podcast, also available on Apple and Spotify, but that is a members-only, subscriber-only podcast. So you have to go to the Substack, get a special subscriber-only link, and that will hinge you in if you want to use Apple or Spotify to listen to it. You'll get a special link for that. There's also all sorts of articles and stuff like that on the Substack. I'm going to be posting some video clips later today from different socialist trainings we watch. So it is free to sign up for my Substack if you want to do that, if you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business. Because unlike James Lindsay, I don't take money from organizations. I will never be a tool of the political establishment again. I was a tool of the political establishment back in 2020. I was used to sell a political narrative about Democrats leading the left. It will never fucking happen again. I am funded by you. I am funded by grassroots people that care about the truth. My only job is to tell you the truth and to show you the receipts. When you fund my work for $8 a month, $80 a year, you are funding my ability to do these streams. You are funding my ability to do these podcasts. You are funding my ability to write articles, to make video clips, to write my next book that I'm working on. You are funding my ability to tell you the truth in a way that is grounded into reality. I am the only person on the internet doing the type of stuff that I'm doing. Please help me continue to do that. If you can financially afford to support my work, $8 a month, less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks if you're getting a big one with like quad shots and all that stuff. Anyway, I really do appreciate it, guys. You guys are the ones that allow me to do this, and you guys are the ones that make sure that I do not ever have to sell out to the political establishment. I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. And why don't we just play out with some music? You guys want to hear the James Piper song again? Let's do that. All right, guys, I will be back tomorrow. Take care. We'll see you.
Piper, James, take the way to deceiver. You're lying to millions. You're why we lose. Piper, James, great deceiver. You're living in delusion, and you're why we lose. James Lindsay spinning tails, got a fantasy in play, pocketing that cash while he's leading minds astray. Milfs for liberty, he's cashing in the bucks, but his logic's out of whack, man, it's all just muck. Left hates capitalism, he's blind to the facts. Queer theories misunderstood, it's a different attack. Destabilizing norms, breaking down the walls, but James blocks the truth, man, he's lost in the halls. Piper, James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper, James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, it's a bubble of deceit. While he's pocketing the green, we're exposing the cheat. Leonardi drops the mask with a bang. Where liberation means capitalism, invest in gold. Stop blocking the truth, James, open up your eyes. The theory's misunderstood, capitalism's a pride. Destroying the old norms, shaking up the scene. Face up to reality, stop the serial line. James, great deceiver. Your lies are weak, we're calling out the truth. Piper, James, great deceiver. You steal from us, yet you're still deluded. Echo chamber stick, whiteness, capitalism, it's all intertwined. Queer theory's the lens, but you're way behind. Liberation means capitalism's gone. The lies will cost us. Endless reality built on your lies. Hyper James, great deceiver. Parents follow your advice, kids pay the price. Hyper James, great deceiver.